Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to take this moment to say thank you for listening to the Real ResQ podcast. It means a lot to me that you enjoy these stories as much as I do. Since the start of this podcast, we've had a lot of support from all over the world. It has been amazing. Now, we have companies joining our team that also want to say thank you for all that you are doing out there standing the watch. These companies are offering discounts on their products as a way to support the rescue community and those tuning into the Real ResQ podcast. Just go to therealresq.com, click on sponsors, and see these incredible offers for yourself. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Axness, because when lives are at stake and conditions are challenging, clear communication is of the utmost importance. SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. And Airwave, the Airwave Performance Mouthpiece, helping you to use breathing to your advantage. Breeze Eastern, they dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. The Axness PNG wireless ICS system can bring cutting-edge wireless intercommunication system technology to any aircraft. The PNG system can be fully integrated into an existing ICS system or can be carried on and off as a mobile base station. They can go anywhere at any time on any aircraft. Plus, with the strongest and most robust waterproofed handheld in the market, this system can take a hit and keep working. Their wireless intercom systems are designed to enhance situational awareness through improved communication capability. This system brings superior noise canceling technology to eliminate rotor wash and engine noise from your ICS. The Axness PNG wireless system is currently deployed in more than 1,800 public safety, air ambulance, and search and rescue aircrafts worldwide. I have personally used the Axness system in 4 different countries and on 5 different airframes. It is awesome. If you want more information, contact them today at axness.com. That's AXNES.com. You just make sure you tell them Quinny sent me. SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help your helicopter training. They train daytime, nighttime, aerial firefighting, hoist, longline, fast rope, rappel, and more. They can assist your program with standardization and safety checks or just an FAA annual refresher. With the certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew, they are ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. Plus, right now, SR3 is offering 10% off anything in their web store with the promo code, all capital letters, Real ResQ, REALRESQ. Plus, they are offering another 10% from their partners Petzl and their equipment. All you got to do is send an email to info@sr3rescueconcepts.com, mention this podcast, and they'll take care of the rest. And Airwave. What if I told you that you could train harder for longer and recover faster just by wearing a mouthpiece? I know, I questioned it too. Then I gave it a try. The Airwave Performance Mouthpiece is a breakthrough in performance technology that is scientifically proven with over 15 years of peer-reviewed, published research at the Citadel to open your airway by 25% for improved breathing, resulting in a 20% decrease in respiratory rate, an increase in muscular endurance, and 50% reduction in cortisol levels post-workout. Now, what does this mean to me? Well, now I'm able to train harder, recover faster, and be even more prepared for when that SAR alarm goes off. You don't need to take my word for it. Try it yourself and see how you can use your breathing to your advantage. Go to airwave.com or visit them on Instagram @airwave to learn more about it. Then, when you're ready to give it a try, Because you heard about it here at the Real ResQ, you get 10% off with the promotion code Real ResQ, REALRESQ. Coming up next on this episode of the Real ResQ, we are joined by a guy from Canada. He's a ski patroller, he's a hoist operator, and he's a paramedic. He comes to us with some phenomenal stories from the mountain and other aspects of his career and what he's been doing. As a matter of fact, we went 2.5 hours here and we didn't even get into his hoist rescue stuff out of the helicopter. So that just means we're going to have him back. So please welcome our next guest, Mr. Brian Fishbook. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast.
Let's go.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real ResQ. Today, our guest, Mr. Brian Fishbook. And let's see, Brian, you are living in Whistler area, British Columbia, Canada, eh? Canada, eh?
That's right.
Can I say it
right.
like Canada?
Eh?
It's Canadian, eh?
Yeah.
All right, that
That's
might
a
only
good
be
stereotype.
funny to me. Yeah, it totally
Good
is.
stereotype.
But it's
Yeah.
totally true because all of you guys do that, don't you?
Yeah, I'll apologize. I'll apologize at some point during the podcast.
I freaking
So
love
that's
it.
what we do.
Oh, that's hilarious. Brian, so you are a ski patroller working for Blackcomb Helicopters or Blackcomb in general? Is that Blackcomb
So
Helicopters
Whistler,
is what I know.
Whistler Blackcomb
Okay.
is the ski area here. And
Okay.
and then the local helicopter company is called Blackcomb Helicopters, and I work for them, but they do work together, but they're not connected like professionally or business wise.
Got it. Okay. You're also a hoist operator for Blackcomb Helicopters, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then part-time paramedic.
That's right.
Jeez, you're just a glutton for punishment is what you are.
Yeah. Well, those that know me from the ambulance service will be like barely, but anyway, I do still work there. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. All right. So little background about you and I though is you and I met about 2.5 years ago at Heli Expo down in Dallas of all places. And you had gone down there with Blackcomb or actually, no, I shouldn't say that. You went down there on your own at that point, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, sort of loosely affiliated with Blackcomb, but on my own. And I've been going since 2015 to
nice.
Heli Expo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So shoot, you and I probably crossed paths at least once or twice while we were there. That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. But we officially met there. A lot of it through Rob Monday. Shout out to Rob Monday. Yeah.
Hello, Rob.
Hello, Rob. And while we were there, we ended up totally hitting it off and just having a blast together. We started talking about some rescues and the whole podcast came up. And then this year we're back together again, having a blast. I was like, Brian, when are you coming to join me? And you're like, fine. Oh, come on.
No, not fine. I mean, there's a bit of trepidation. I'm certainly not a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. And I see all these people from around the world doing, these incredible full-time capacity wild rescues. And I'm just not sure if it really fits in, but at the same time, there's things to share. And so, yeah, I'm psyched that you find it worthy, and we'll go from there. But mostly, yeah, it's been a great connection community-wise as you've started developing that with the podcast. And so I've been listening to lots and people that I know and other people that I've wondered about, etc. So yeah, great sort of central connection to the specifically hoist rescue world, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks,
so
man.
it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be here.
Dude, I'm so excited you're here. And a lot of it is like, all right, so we have a group between us that for SR3 Rescue Concepts, like there's a social, SR3 social. And in that group, you send all these videos about you going up, blowing up like sides of mountains and stuff. And I'm exaggerating with some of it, but not really. And then we're doing the hoist and rappelling and all the stuff that you send. I'm like, oh my God, dude.
Yeah, it's fun. I guess probably thanks to Rob Monday there to be like, hey, you got to do Jason Quinn's podcast. I'm like, I don't know, man. And then he's like, no, you do. So his enthusiasm is part of the motivation, I guess. And then, yeah, what you're talking about is avalanche control from the ski patrol perspective there. So we use explosives to manage the avalanche hazard within the ski area. And a lot of that's just super fun. Lots of it's hard work, but lots of it's super fun. So.
All right, we're gonna have to like touch on a little bit.
We'll touch
more
on that later.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, Rob, thanks for having Brian come on. Way to coax him into it. I appreciate it. So,
yeah.
All right, Brian. Well, if you don't mind, man, give us a little background. Where are you from? How did you grow up? And how the heck did you get into ski patrol and search and rescue?
Yeah. So where did it all start? I grew up in Vancouver, so 2 hours south of Whistler. So Whistler's the sort of big international ski resort north of British Columbia, Canada. North of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So west coast of Canada. And it's really arguably the largest ski resort in North America. And but I was a kid growing up in Vancouver, and because I topped out at 5'8" and 155 pounds, it was very clear I wasn't going to the NHL at a young age.
Man.
And so my brother and I were playing hockey, and then we sort of both stopped that early teens, I guess. And we had gone skiing a few times. There's some local mountains like right close by Vancouver. And sort of annually we would skip school, and my dad would take us up there in his jeans and put us on the rope tow. And we sort of knew that we liked skiing. And who doesn't? But something got in our blood there early. And then as hockey ended, we were just like, my brother and I, my brother's 2 years older than me, we're just like, we're skiers now. And we just sort of hook, line, and sinker into that, and it just really captured both of us. So skiing was sort of this main draw to experience the mountains. My parents not skiers, my dad from the prairies in central Canada, a farm kid, but they just facilitated our sort of love and joy of that. So that sort of got us interested down the mountain path. Then I went to university at the University of British Columbia, that's in Vancouver as well. And, skiing as much as I could, and making my schedule revolve around if I could have a day off during the week so I could go skiing. So that was sort of the main sport that I loved to do. And of course, growing up in the West Coast of British Columbia, there's lots of access to mountains and ocean and outdoor activities. So that was sort of a draw from the beginning. Then my brother took his first aid course because he was working at a sawmill. And then I don't even know how he stumbled into the volunteer ski patrol program that exists at Blackcomb. And that back then, Blackcomb Mountain and Whistler Mountain were two competitive ski areas across the valley from each other. So two separate things. So he started with Blackcomb. Later it merged together as a big company as it is now. But he went up there and found this sort of volunteer ski patrol program. And I remember him coming back and being like, hey, there's like this group of sort of outdoor mountain professionals that are all skiers. That's really the main identity that we had. They're like these great skiers, but they're mountaineers, and there's rescue guys, and they're doing helicopter stuff and avalanche control. And so he got sort of really captivated by that.
Sign me the heck up.
Totally.
What?
And because it was all sort of ski central or ski centric, that it was a draw to me as well. And then in my second to last year at university, I had lined up some field work because I did a degree in geomorphology. So sort of like geology, earth surface processes, that type of stuff. So I had this field work with this master's student that I was going to go do like landslide measurements or something like that. And at the last minute in August, I had all this work lined up. He was like, yeah, you know what? We're not doing that. So thanks for coming out, but no job. And I was like, ooh, all of a sudden I didn't have any work. I jumped on the first aid course. I don't know why I did that, but I was like, oh, well, I don't have any work, so maybe I'll take this first aid course. So I got that under my belt, which was the baseline first aid I needed to volunteer ski patrol. And then I joined my brother volunteer ski patrolling, and just got a taste for the same thing. You're like, okay, so here's this mountain that I love skiing at and really interested in. And now here's these sort of mountain medicine professionals on the ski hill. And it's sort of both things meshed together. And if we rewind farther back than that, my uncle, my mom's brother-in-law was a fireman in Vancouver. And then, so we looked up to him and when we loved his stories. And then we had a family friend who was in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And so we had sort of a couple good sort of mentors, but most kids like fire, police, rescue anyways. But I think that was a part of it, that sort of built some draw there. And then that interest coupled with skiing, it just, spark, ignition, flame, and we were away. So in my last year university, I volunteered as a ski patroller and loved it and had some great experiences there and was working with my brother. And then the next year I was lucky enough to get hired full-time there. I sort of promised myself that, because I got asked if I wanted to quit university and come full-time ski patrolling in that last year. And I was like, oh, that's probably not a super smart move, because I probably will never finish university. So in a fine moment of logical thinking, which is not my strong point, I stayed in university, graduated, and then promised myself that I would ski at least 1 year full time, be a ski bum and see what it was like to ski 100 days instead of 30,
And how did that work out? Huh?
Well, and so then I got hired, and that was, and then so 1990, in the 1900s, I was hired in
That's so funny.
I know, right? 1995 was my first full-time, 95, the winter 95, 96, my first full-time winter. So I moved up to Whistler where my brother was living, moved into like sort of a loose family friends basement. My brother and I shared a room across the way where the guy that I lived with, his two young sons in bunk beds. So we were just like derelicts, our hockey gear drying in our room, ski gear drying in our room. And we just skied and ski patrolled like all day long. So yeah, that started. And then that first year really sort of captured me. I was like, well, I definitely need to do another year of that. And then tick, 26 years later, I'm still a ski patroller.
Oh my gosh. 26 years later.
26. So, you always you're just like, oh, I wonder how this is going to play out. Like, I wonder what I'm actually going to be when I grow up. And then, yeah, you're like, I wonder what my career is actually going to end up being. And well, it turns out it's a ski patroller.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder the same thing. It's hanging out of helicopters. I don't know.
Totally. Which then opened all these different doors that's ended me up here.
Man, that is so cool. Dude, out of curiosity, in all of that, really quick, did you ever strap on a snowboard?
I have actually I've never snowboarded. I've tried it for 20 feet, and I never tried it. I was always really just so engaged by skiing. I just loved skiing so much. And then that whole revolution happened, and I was quite into snowboarding because my cousin, 2 years older than me, is like the original, arguably, queen bee of all things snowboarding, Victoria Jalouse, for those that are snowboard fans. She's sort of, this, like, her entire career, she paved the way for female snowboarding, really. And so I followed snowboarding a lot because of her and the revolution that was happening there. But I personally haven't done it.
Oh, wow.
And, now all my friends that were diehard snowboarders are skiers anyways.
Coming back.
Ski touring is such a huge thing. It's a little more practical than splitboard snowboarding. So, but both things are great ways to experience the mountains. Dude,
I love it. I love a snowboard now, but I do both. Like, I'll jump on skis anytime.
Yeah. I think one person said snowboarding is for having fun in the mountains. Skiing is for working in the mountains, and they are just a little more versatile. And we need to be on skis to ski patrol. For a few different reasons, but so skiing's always been the main love. And then I'll rewind a little bit to a shout out to my parents, who weren't, like I said, weren't skiers, but saw the love of skiing that my brother and I had. And my dad worked at a sawmill his entire life. He'd be up early, and on Saturday mornings he'd get up early again, drive us up this sort of 2+ hour single lane mountain highway to Whistler in terrible conditions, drop us off at the ski hill, let us go nuts. They'd go for breakfast in the one or two places to have breakfast in the Whistler Village back then. Now it's a massive resort, but back then it was quite small. And they'd go for a walk in the golf course, have a nap in the car, and basically wait for us to be done. And
Oh my
then
gosh.
we'll get in the car, snacks, food, nap, and they'd drive us home. And every once in a while, we were so amped on how awesome it was that we'd like turn around and go straight back up on Sunday and do it again, like double day. And then my dad would be back to work. And yeah, so like the
Your dad is the
dedication.
bomb, dude.
Yeah,
That is
mom and dad
awesome.
both. The dedication to just let their kids explore the things that they love, like that'll I'll get emotional if I keep talking about it. But like I just look at that, the privilege that is, and two, their dedication to just let us thrive in the things that we were drawn to.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
freaking awesome.
it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Go,
Yeah,
mom
so
and
thanks,
dad.
mom and dad.
Woo-hoo.
Thanks, mom and dad. Yeah.
I love that. Well, man, since you've been doing this, like you said, 26 years. Good Lord. So
Yeah.
we have a whole bunch we're going to talk about, and really, I'm going to let it ride. Just have some fun. But we got to start with number one, dude. What was your very first rescue, man? Because everybody has it.
Right. So I guess maybe unlike some of the rescue specialists that you interview, they're in a small group, like sort of 2-man rescue team, or maybe even a single person like you guys rescue swimming going out ski patrolling. You are the first responder, but then you've got this team that backs you up, and a lot of the rescues take quite a bit of manpower anyways. So my rescues are both independent, but also followed up with lots of help. So my very first call as a ski patroller, I'd done my first aid course, but I'd never seen a live patient, or sort of a real patient before, was simply a person with a broken wrist that walked into one of our ski patrol sort of huts where we staged and readiness. And I walked in, and a woman that it sort of was kind of shadow, or I was her shadow, Fiona Durkole. If she ever listens to this, she's a superstar and she knows it. Walk in, and here's this person with a broken wrist, and she's like, "Hey, this is your patient. Go ahead," and sort of fumble through a primary survey and secondary, and to figure out if you're going to splint and ask your questions awkwardly and do all that. So that's really, I guess, my first call.
You didn't even have to go anywhere. They came to you.
No,
That's
I didn't.
So nice of them.
Totally. And then maybe that same day, or at least that same week, like that would have been my first week patrolling. That would have been my volunteer year. So I did that volunteer year. I wasn't even full time there yet. And then a spinal injury was my sort of first, I guess, more complicated one. Just someone with neck pain from hit some big jump and landed on their neck and back, and you're like, okay, so packaging on a spine board and toboggan. So luckily, the progression was a little bit slow, and you have all this support. You start developing your sort of process around how you see patients. And again, kudos to the ski patrol. I had all these incredibly experienced people to model your sort of rescue style after your first aid style, and some really, really high level paramedics that work for us on the ski hill, and doctors and other longtime ski patrollers. And so you're picking these ways of talking to patients and approaching calls from other people's examples. So it's a really great deal of learning that happened there. And then if I go to my first big injury, let me actually look at some notes. Oh yeah, so in the upper Alpine, it was a cold day, probably -15, and I wasn't the first one on, but we got
Celsius or 15.
Sorry, yes, -15. Yeah, -15 Celsius. So do you have a converter that shows up on the screen? Do you have a Celsius converter that shows up on the screen to Fahrenheit?
I should. You know what? I'll add it just because you mentioned it. So it'll be right.
So it's
there.
Cold. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, it's cold, crisp, sunny day, and we get what's, for us, we call it a code 3 call. So it's a more significant accident. It's a sort of an immediate response, and the first person goes down there, and it's this unconscious female, maybe early 20s. She's been snowboarding on a relatively flat road, but it's a hard packed day. It hasn't snowed in a while. And she's snowboarding. And as you know, as a snowboarder, sort of going straight and flat can be a bit tricky. And so she hooked that heel edge that lots of people will understand if they're snowboarders.
Yep.
And so then heel edge, which flips her backwards and then immediately smacks her head. And she's unconscious, seizing, vomiting on the ski hill. So, the call comes in and it's quite obviously quite serious. And so then there's a significant response of ski patrollers. And again, this is what I'm talking about. We're lucky to sort of have this ability to layer doctor, ACP, advanced care paramedic, and ski patrollers onto that call. So you could easily have
you've got a straight up doctor coming out. It's on the mountain.
Yeah. So we can talk about that in detail as well. Yeah. So we've had for many years, and the Blackcomb Ski Patrol for sure has been a pioneer in developing sort of this doctor / advanced care paramedic program. Unfortunately, the advanced care paramedic program has sort of fallen off a little bit with some logistics around how the company's run and stuff, but we still have a long-standing doctor program. Yeah, so we can have quite advanced care on the ski hill, thank goodness.
That's crazy. All right, so I didn't mean to cut you off.
So man, no, that's okay. That's so so the whole so the cavalry shows up to this call, and I showed up after the fact to bring maybe some additional O2 or something, and I was on a snowmobile, and you got there and it's like, okay, so this is the first sort of real serious call, and it's challenging. It's cold. She's unconscious and seizing and clenched up, so no OPA, head injury, so probably elected to no NPA back then. The vomit's like freezing on her mouth, so she's sort of critical. You're sort of trying to bag her in those cold temps. Nothing really works. I remember specifically helping maybe hold the IV bag, watch the paramedics start the IV, but then as soon as you run the fluid through the IV tubing and that temperature, right, just immediately froze, even though it's like normal saline. So now you got a frozen IV line, you're trying to heat that up with a hot pack. So, just the complexity of those types of calls in that environment is difficult. And at the same time, super engaging, I guess, to keep me doing it for 26 years. Cause you're just, it's this sort of this teamwork, these challenges that you learn to work around, or at least anticipate. Maybe now you would already anticipate that and try and pack that tubing in something heated or protect it. Wow. And so then they were trying to give just like a IV hub that they had just I think they were in their left woman's arm, like AC fossa at their elbow, the vein there, and then just trying to push drugs through it like a needle into just an IV port or hub. But of course, in that temperature, even the cooling effect of the metal needle, you just immediately freezes in the needle as you try and push it through. So just challenging efforts to do a resus on this woman that's critically injured. Wow. They did, if I remember correctly, they did finally manage to get an IV started and then paralyze her and get her intubated, and then medevaced her off the ski hill, so we had helicopter land relatively close by, and get her packaged up and stabilized the best you could. At that point, really the ABCs are the key factors in those type of calls in that environment, and off we went. So yeah, that had been sort of my first real significant call. It wasn't particularly mine, but I was involved in, and really set the stage to just be like, oh man, this job's got lots going on. And those type of calls, the frequency isn't super high, but we've certainly seen plenty of that type of thing over the years. And yeah, wow. the teamwork, I guess, is the real draw there. And there's some incredible mentors that have come along the way in those calls that I admired so much in my early years. And I was like, I want to be able to handle patients like that, those people.
Wow, man.
And then getting to work directly with advanced care paramedics back then, and the doctors, which are mostly emerge docs, you also end up, as just a BLS person, like on the ambulance, you're sort of doing your best with your patient, but there isn't sort of this collaborative nature like there is ski patrolling. You sort of layering in a doctor and layering in this long time air evac ambulance, paramedic that also works on the hill, to see their style and the way they approach patients and stuff. So the learning curve there on the ski patrol has been something that I've greatly valued.
Yeah.
And then
I can see
ideally
that.
you sort of take the things that you like from individuals and try and be your best version of their versions. And so ideally, I guess the people that go ahead or move on and are a boiled down and consolidated version of the awesome people that went before us.
Dang.
At least ideally, that's the way it would work. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Man, that is so cool. I'm sorry for the girl who got hurt, but to have a full team show up, that's freaking great, man. I love that.
Yeah, the Blackcomb Ski Patrol and collectively the Whistler Blackcomb Ski Patrol now, that it is a remarkable group there. And not all ski patrols around North America have that level of advanced care directly available on the ski hill. And a number of the docs and or people that, doctors from around the world that have witnessed calls, they're like, there's often a comment that you're like, that level of care is really no different, minus the environment that you might get if you crashed your car outside the primary emergency hospital, in Vancouver. For us, the main trauma hospital is called Vancouver General Hospital, so VGH. Yeah. And a lot of these docs are ICU and emerge docs in those primary trauma centers, and so you're getting remarkable level of care in situ on the ski hill. Wow, and I'm proud to be a part of that and sort of try and perpetuate that and keep that going. And it's a real honor to work with such incredibly experienced people and then translate the mountain side of it, which isn't the doctor's specialty. So there's this cool symbiotic relationship with, and specifically if we're talking about the doctors and the ski patrollers, they look up to the ski patrollers because the ski ability is there and sort of the rescue background with ropes or helicopters or whatever needs to happen, or even just complexity of moving in difficult terrain. They really sort of rely on the patrol to handle the logistics of a complex call. And then we really rely on the doc to provide that advanced care. And so that relationship's really two ways, and it makes for kind of a special connection there. And so both, I think, value each other, and that's awesome.
Brian, that's sick. Dude, I love that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Out of curiosity, in your 26 years, is there a common, all right, let me rephrase that question a little bit, because going through medic school and EMT school and all those, they talk about ski injuries and the breaking the legs when you get your ski going one direction, your leg goes the other, and your broken wrist because you end up falling backwards and you crank your wrist and whatnot. Is there a common theme or common injury that you see on the mountain?
Yeah, if we had to boil it down, I would say skiers hurt their knees would be the primary thing, and snowboarders break their wrists and dislocate their shoulders, and then maybe equally skiers and snowboarders dislocate their shoulders. So broken wrists, injured knees, most often a ligamentous injury, the ACL is the main thing there, and then the dislocated shoulders. That is a really sort of common theme, and then everything in between there, the skier's thumb, the laceration, maybe the next level up is the boot top fracture in the skier.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I was thinking about.
The tib fib fracture. Yeah. Yeah. Quite common. And then we'll see the femur fracture, lots of concussions,
occasional tree injury.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this sort of contact with whatever that may be. And
the thing that didn't move when they ran into it.
Exactly.
Turned. I don't know why you didn't just turn.
Yeah, exactly. And what, surprisingly, like that first rescue, they're really critical and nasty injuries can also happen in wide open green runs, easy runs. There's sort of a mix, the speed and the generation of power that comes from skiing. You can have the equally horrible, and I would say actually our frequency of like high acuity accidents doesn't really correspond with the technicality of the terrain. We've got a lot of what would be called extreme terrain. You can get off the lift and ski 100 meters to close to 1,000-foot couloir of starting at probably 50 degrees and maintaining in the high 40s or mid 40s Like you can
Holy
access this
smoke.
terrain like immediately off the ski hill, or sorry, off the chairlift. Yet we don't see the critical accidents happening in the critical terrain. We actually see it in probably sort of the mid-range terrain. So that's an interesting
Right on.
kind of set of facts there.
So another thing, kind of follow-up question with that is, so you guys show up on scene to anybody that's injured, and I expect, let's say, like you said, boot fracture or the boot ski, right? Boot fracture?
Yeah, a boot top fracture. Yeah,
boot
like
top.
just
right.
mid tib fib fracture would be the same thing.
Rookie mistake right there. That's mine. Sorry. It's been a little while. Okay, I'm sorry.
You'll get the lingo. You'll get the lingo.
But so those types of injuries, when they're happening, let's say mid or upper part of the mountain, you're showing up on scene as kind of a rescue team. You still have to get them down the mountain. Now, like, I know you got snowmobiles, I know you got stuff, but what is the normal? Let me get you off the mountain from point A to point B.
Yeah, good point. So, I mean, one of the flagship parts of Whistler Blackcomb is a vertical mile of like vertical ski terrain there. So if you get on the chairlifts in the village and you ride a vertical mile up the ski hill to where most of the skiing happens. So you're a long way from sort of the parking lot, the road, the access to the clinic, that type of thing. So yeah, everyone gets transported primarily on a toboggan, so a skiable stretcher, if you will.
Wow.
And so anything that isn't simple and maybe close to a chairlift, because the option is to put someone on a chairlift and ride it down. Typically everyone rides up. You can also ride down. And then we've got primary gondolas now that access sort of the main portion of the ski hill. So we do have the ability to ride the gondola down as well with patients. But often that switchover is just as much logistics as just once you're packaged in a toboggan and rolling down the ski hill, you might as well just keep it that way. So for the most part, people that are non-ambulatory go in a toboggan and get skied to the valley by one ski patroller just skiing around up in front of the toboggan. You can kind of control it. They've got these rigid handles that extend out of the front of the stretcher. It's a smooth bottom with these rails that help guide it and make it ski with a little bit of control. And then as the complexity goes up, you can sort of add some basic rope management to that to get across a side hill or move through more difficult terrain. A person will be behind the toboggan as well, kind of helping with managing the momentum and moving through terrain. But for the most part, get yourself onto a groom ski run, and then you'll take your patient all the way to the valley, meet either a company truck if they're sort of semi-ambulatory there. They'll get in a truck and get taken to the local clinic, which is not affiliated with the ski hill. It's the community clinic, but it has I think almost a 10-bed sort of ER there, a couple trauma bays, and a helipad that can then meet the air ambulance from the city if there's critical transport from there. And then otherwise the ambulance will pick us up at the closest point where it's snow meets road, basically, and do a transfer there to the ambulance service, which is the provincial ambulance service, so not associated with the ski hill. And they'll take the patient from there to the clinic. So everything comes off the ski hill via the ski patrol and then transfers into sort of the British Columbia healthcare system, and they go from there. The same way if you got hurt on the side of the road or in your house.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
so now
it's lots of movement.
Ready? Next follow-up question. Out of rescue stuff that you guys have had to do, whether it's avalanches or I can't even think of really anything other than an avalanche off the side of but I'm sure what do you see? What do you guys get called out for?
Yes, so we get the full range. The ski patrollers' duties are kind of threefold. We are responsible for all just like the marking and management of the ski run, so all the signage, all the fences that make people designate areas and mark off hazards and all that. So we're responsible to make sure the ski hill's in good shape, so that people are well managed in the hazards that exist and don't sort of ski off a cut bank on a road or off a cliff that's not marked. So that's our responsibility. We do all that. And then we do all of the first aid, from handing out Band-Aids all the way up to complex rescue. And then we do all the avalanche control on the ski hill when there's hazards. So from the rescue side of things, the frequency decreases as the acuity goes up. But there's, full capacity of double rope rescue teams there. So we're sort of using I think we're hitting the standard on mountain rope rescue, twin tension systems now for double rope. Yeah. If we're in the vertical environment, and then a fair amount of kind of hybrid work where just someone may need to be put on belay and walked out of a steep area that maybe has a fall hazard below it or something like that. Wow. Or just a belayed walk down to make contact with someone to put a harness on them to help them either walk further down past the hazard or how they're stuck, or up all the way up to the full vertical litter rope rescue. Jeez, and those don't happen super often, but we call the sort of mid-range thing a quick pick. Someone gets in over their head in terrain and is stuck, whether they're stuck based on their own ability, and they just can't go on and they need some assistance, or they're properly stuck over top of some cliff hazard or frozen terrain that just doesn't let them move farther and actually truly need sort of rope access rescue. Then that quick pick would be single line on a belay device, typically a Petzl ID, move down to that patient, get a harness, like a Yates rescue harness on them, connect them to the same rope, and then you're sort of this belayed assisted movement either up or down to get them to a safe spot. And all that's really fun. Yeah, all that's really fun, right? Because it's that teamwork, the rope stuff I really enjoy. And but those aren't super common. And then there's just lots of difficult spots, whether it's in the trees, steep terrain, where sort of the ski patrol's own skiing ability is the key element to making that rescue. So someone is in a steep mogul run with lots of trees, and it's the ski ability that gets the toboggan delivered by the ski patroller into that position, and then you'll dig a snow platform to put them into whatever configuration they need, back mat or spine board or whatever that is. Load them into the toboggan, and then sort of multi-person movements with some assistance of the toboggan to get it out of that difficult steep terrain, or do some weird traverse across difficult terrain to get out to an easy ski hill where you can then handle that call like as a single person and ski them to the valley. So yeah, lots of teamwork, lots and lots of teamwork, which is amazing, and lots of layered response. So first person goes to the call, figures out what it is, and then starts adding equipment from there. And it's really fun when those go smoothly. You feel like you've got quite a capable team. Yeah. And then if we go even farther to that, Blackcomb Ski Patrol, again, kudos to them and some of the rescue, sort of early day rescue specialists, even in the province, let alone the country, had the first civilian Class D fixed line, or what you guys in the US call short haul, rescue programs outside of our federal government, Parks Canada. So our federal parks have like a rescue specialty program made up of mountain guides. It's rescue specialists that work for Parks Canada, and they've been doing fixed line rescue in Canada. They really were the beginners of that in the early 70s. And then I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, George Zalahi, if you listen to this from MergeCo, early 80s, the recognition that like, hey, this fixed line capability can maybe be brought to the civilian rescue world. And again, I'll give some pioneer shout outs. Bruce Brink, a mentor of mine, ALS paramedic / sort of longtime mountain rescue specialist. They like me were sort of these volunteer ski patrollers. He worked for the ambulance service specifically in the Coast Guard. And they're like, man, the ski patrol job has got this cool arena of mountain rescue happening. Let's be a part of that as well. And they brought some of the advanced paramedic skill to the mountain. They really sort of launched that development of the high level care within the ski patrol environment. And so one of which including was like, hey, we can have this fixed line helicopter rescue program be part of our internal rescue capability as well. Yeah. So that's part of it. Helicopters have been used for medivacs off the ski hill, and that's the most common way in an acutely injured patient. It's such a long toboggan ride whether it's patient aggravation or time, the election will often is to use the helicopter, and then we'll land that on scene as close as we can or close as practical, load them in the aircraft, fly them to the local clinic that I was talking about, go inside there, stabilize, and most of the time they can handle it from there, whether it's a ground transport for surgery or whatever else is happening, or interface with the BC air ambulance that'll come and meet that patient on the pad and fly them to the primary trauma center in Vancouver. So any of our helicopter work is just rescue based, small A-Star typically, sometimes 407, off the ski hill, 2-minute flight down to a helipad at the clinic, hand off, stabilize there, and then carry on. Dang. And then if we're in a location that's really difficult to access the patient, it's going to take a long time, or there's a big manpower draw or something like that, then the option is to use the fixed line with the helicopter rescue program. And that's an internal program. So we actually own, Whistler Blackcomb owns the rescue kit. For those that sort of know how all that works, we own the rescue kit. Often in lots of places, it's the helicopter company that owns it. But we own the rescue kit, and then we interface with the local helicopter carrier, which is Blackcomb Helicopters. And the regulations in Canada say if you're going to do Class D rescue, so humans hanging out underneath the helicopter, you need to have what's called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, which is an agreement between the user and the helicopter operator. It says we'll do rescue in this fashion. Well, this will be our scope of practice. This is the equipment we'll use. This is how we'll train. So we've got an MOU with Blackcomb Helicopters. They provide Class D rescue if we need it on the ski hill. So the ski patrollers will be the rescuers, and the helicopter pilot will be the provision of that.
That's so freaking amazing, dude.
And so maybe on that, a little fast forward to a rescue that's now maybe several years ago. And over the years, Blackcomb Helicopters was just this small local helicopter company. Now it's quite large. Back then it was a small local helicopter company. And so they had their primary pilots. We do medivacs. We'd use the helicopter to do helicopter avalanche control. They'd fly snow guns around. They were sort of the main helicopter that got used for any helicopter work that we needed to do, slinging otherwise. And all the pilots there pretty much were skiers and sort of locally lived in Whistler. And so there was this great relationship between them and the ski patrol. And it was almost like the Blackcomb Ski Patrol's air wing, if you will. They would ski on the hill. Awesome. Everyone hung out together. There was just this incredible family camaraderie there. And Steve Flynn, he was sort of the owner of the helicopter company there, and he was a real advocate of those relationships as well. So some really great people there that sort of paved that culture. But so if we're talking about one specific rescue, we had a number of volunteer or were full-time ski patrollers that had become pilots, and a couple of them work for Blackcomb Helicopters locally. So then suddenly we've now got these pilots that have been ski patrollers in their own right. So they really know the operation super well, and they're often now becoming our rescue pilots. So there's a great interface there of sort of knowledge, and you can talk the same language, and they know the ski hill intimately. So there's a really cool crossover that happens there that I think is good for the patients and for us. And and there's one particular rescue which is pretty unique if we want to go into that.
That's right. Come on, baby.
At this point,
I'm in, dude.
Right. So this is quite a crazy call. I want to say it's maybe, it's probably 5 years ago now. COVID, you always instantly lose 2 years without even thinking about it. Might even be longer.
Totally.
So call comes in, someone's been caught in an avalanche in the upper Alpine, the Seventh Heaven area of the Blackcomb Mountain. And the description of where it is, we can actually see that area from our ski patrol hut. So we put the binoculars on it. We look outside. It's conditions that don't really have much avalanche hazard. It hasn't snowed in a while. There isn't really an avalanche hazard that exists. So first of all, we're like, avalanche, it's hard to picture an avalanche happening in that region. So we're scanning it with the binoculars, don't really see it, trying to make sure we're, the call that came in isn't sort of somewhere else. And so we're sort of surmising on could it be here? Could it be there? Let's go look and check. Anyways, initial ski patrollers head out, and they find this woman in sort of this big open bowl that you can traverse through the rocks and then move out into this big open bowl. But otherwise it's kind of just 30-degree slope, open bowl with a traverse mark. And here's this critically injured woman. She's unconscious. She obviously has a traumatic head injury, lacerations. So she's critical, unconscious. Well, I think with, like, you know, with agonal respirations. And so it's a really critical call. We're like, but where did she come from? Like, how did she get here in this open slope? Like, why is she so injured so badly in this open terrain? And as they sort of put it together, there is a small avalanche. So avalanches can be various sizes, and the smallest one basically doesn't have enough snow to even bury someone, but it would have enough snow to sort of sweep someone off their feet or something. We call that size 1 avalanche. And so there is this size 1 avalanche debris from above this bowl is this really steep, rocky, gullied terrain, but it's not obvious that there's an avalanche that's sort of come out of there, but there is some snow that had moved. And you're like, okay, so did she get caught in this avalanche? It's not big enough to do that type of damage to her. How did she get here? Some people noticed that she's sort of looks like maybe she slid down the slope from up above where the rocks are. So people start to surmise, did she fall from above somehow? And like many rescues that you've experienced, right? The info trickles in, and often initially it's unclear as to what happened, and then more information comes and you start putting it together. And so sure enough, the friends she was with, excuse me, were able to sort of move out of the hazardous terrain and the rocks that they found themselves in, and make their way down to the accident to find their friend critically injured. And then the story starts to come in. We were trying to move through this upper closed area with these really steep rock gullies, and she fell through this rock gully, and you're like, oh, okay. So that makes sense on why she's hurt so badly.
Yeah.
But then second to that, they start mentioning that, like, they don't know where their other friend is.
Oh.
So now we're like, so a huge amount of resources are allotted to trying to resusc this woman in a tricky spot. She's on a steep side of the slope. It's hard to get equipment there. So there's a whole bunch of medical specialty stuff happening there. Of course, it's going to be a medevac. So the aircraft lands farther down in the flats. Smart decision from the medevac, the landing spot manager, Gavin Reed, a longtime sort of helicopter specialist as well that I work with in a few different capacities. He's like, hey, well, while they're trying to resusc this woman, I'll jump in the medevac helicopter and I'll go try and figure out what's going on with the rest of this call. So he jumps in the aircraft and flies up above. And so sure enough, here's this subject that's stuck midway in this rock gully on this tiny little ledge. And he's the second half of that party. And the background story of that is that there's 3 or 4. They move into this closed area. It was well signed, but they move into this closed area. It sort of looks a little inviting from up top. And they move down into this gully. So 2, I think if I'm correct, 2 of them are like, we don't like the way this looks. We're hiking out and going around. We're not going down here. Turns out this guy and his girlfriend continue to move down the gully to see if they can get through this terrain. They then get a little bit spooked, and if I'm correct with the story, they trigger a small little wind slab avalanche. So it's relatively small. It's sort of cross-loaded wind, sort of loads snow into an area, and as they move onto it with their snowboards, the snow releases and slides through this gully. So presumably that spooks them a little bit. And they're like, oh, we don't want to get caught in an avalanche. So for whatever reason, they then chose to take their snowboards off and start trying to walk down this snow gully, which just got steeper and steeper and basically closed out. It wasn't passable by skis or a snowboard. Kind of this dog leg gully. I think the total distance she fell when we measured it, 200 vertical meters.
Oh
so
my
times
God.
that. So times that by 3 for your total feet. So as the story goes, the boyfriend is sort of trying to navigate down this gully, coach the girlfriend to come with him. They're walking down. The gully changes aspect just a little bit, and the snow gets harder than they were walking. I guess without the details, I don't really know what happened. She ends up slipping. He tries to grab her. She slides past him and then has this eventually fatal fall through this gully. And she pours out onto this big snow slope below. Oh. And that's why they find her in sort of the middle of this relatively benign snow slope, but critically injured because she's fallen 200 vertical meters through a rock gully.
Wow.
And now boyfriend is stuck in this gully, in this tiny little, he's moved off to the side of the gully, but he's on this tiny little ledge in amongst a bunch of rocks. So ski patroller that's jumped in the helicopter goes and identifies that there's this person still stuck. So now we've got critically injured patient plus rescue. It, at that point, was obviously a fixed line rescue for the fastest way to take care of him. So we hey, this is going to be a fixed line transport. So we need a Class D pilot, a certified rescue pilot from the helicopter company. This awesome guy that used to ski patrol for us named Andrew Murdoch is now one of the sort of lead pilots for Blackcomb helicopters, but he's working a ski patrol day. He's a part-time ski patroller as well. So he's in the dispatch office. He's like, hey, I'll take the load off the dispatchers who are handling this call. I'll call the helicopter company. I'll figure out what pilot and aircraft is going to come and do the fixed line rescue for you. He calls the helicopter company. They're like, ooh, you're actually everyone's busy. You're actually the only certified dude. So he's like, he's like, okay. So then he puts his skis, he's in his ski gear. He jumps in his skis. He skis the vertical mile to the valley as fast as he can. He takes his ski boots off, jumps in his truck, drives the 15 minutes out to the hangar, which is Blackcomb Helicopter's hangar, rolls an aircraft out of the hangar, and jumps in it in a ski patrol uniform and comes back to the staging area to meet us, to then go do the recce, to realize that we sort of got this, fairly technical fixed line rescue to see if we can get this guy. And so yeah, pretty awesome interface of not a lot of ski hills out there, I think, have in-house rescue pilots. He's like, wait a second, I'll just go grab a helicopter. I'll be right back.
Dude, that's straight up badass.
So that's it. Pretty. Yeah, it's good. And luck, of course, now he knows intimately what's going on with the call, who's where. So sort of the communications and follow through on the call is pretty smooth because he's already integrated into the call in the first place. So we go have a look at it. This guy looks quite precarious. We don't know if the snow is sort of super stiff. We identify this little tree that's just above him, and we're like, I think we might have to put the rescuer onto the tree and at least build an anchor there to then figure out what the movement's going to be like to pick this guy off of his precarious position. So it ended up being myself that went in as the rescue technician. Didn't really know what the snow was like, so elected to wear crampons, which can be sort of plus minus, right? They work awesome when you need them, but they're also tricky and easy to catch on stuff and stumble, and an ice axe and just a little bit of rope gear to potentially make this sort of small belay movement down to this guy and see if potentially we needed to be anchoring ourselves there to make contact with him. So sure enough, I get flown up there from the staging area, and as we're sort of level flight with the scene, just from once you sort of get down on the hoist hook or something, you can have you get better perspective on what the terrain's like, as opposed to looking at it vertically. And so as I approach sort of more from the level spot, I realized that I should be able to just get right beside him on this ledge. It looks a little more manageable than it did from above. So then just quick comms to say, hey, put me just on the climber's left of this guy. I think I can be static there as we need to. So fly into this little precarious ledge, have to stomp out all this faceted snow. Basically, we call it rotten snow, when just like in your freezer, everything sort of builds up this brittle frost on everything. When snow sits in the rocks, the same thing happens. So it's quite unstable. It's just basically, it's just frost on the rocks. So I sort of have to stomp my way into a decent position before I can come off the line. Sort of bit of a one-handed hold on the rocks. This guy is gripped there. Of course, he is stable, but it's precarious. And he's just watched his girlfriend disappear down this gully. He doesn't know the level of her injuries because he's stuck and she disappeared around the corner. Wow. So that's pretty tragic, and at this point, she's been medevaced. She dies at the clinic, I think.
Damn, I'm sorry to hear
Or
that.
at least was, so horrible accident. She had a ton of complicated injuries, and but it ends up being fatal for her, tragically. So able to get the evac harness on, so hot seat style evac harness on this gentleman, and connected, and able to longline him out of his precarious position back to staging, where then we flew him to the valley, and unfortunately to arrive to the terrible news that his girlfriend had died from the call. But as we know, terrible things happen, and that's the game of rescue. Yeah. But it's this juxtaposition between the excitement of doing that type of work and the tragedy of why it gets done in the first place. And I don't really know how we reconcile that, but I think those of us in this community recognize that it can be both, and it can be both tragic and exciting at the same time, and just is what it is. So you look back to the capacity of the ski patrol in that call, and it felt really good to manage a call with such complexity, to have a pilot just be like, I'll go get a helicopter, I'll be right back, come back, well integrated into the team, knows the game of rescue, knows the pilot, and puts us in there. We're able to get that guy out without a lot of complication. It otherwise would have been, probably for a rope not pass for sure on full length, a 60-meter rope, to move through that gully and get them out of there on rope access as well. We staged rope team, but luckily didn't need to use it because of helicopter work. So that's a memorable one for sure. And a good use of the capacity, proud use of the sort of interagency capacity that we have at Whistler Blackcomb Ski Patrol.
Wow, dude, that's incredible. That is incredible.
That's good.
I'm sorry she fell and tragically lost. Like, my sympathy for her and the family, the boyfriend.
Absolutely.
I love what we do, though. So the fact that you guys put all those resources into play to try to get her out and alive, and to go back and get him out, even though they went beyond the bounds that where they're supposed to go, huh? I mean, those are subtle elements. It's complicated terrain. We do our very best to designate those areas with lots of signage, but it's also easy for people that are excited and poking around and adventuring to find themselves in the wrong spots. And so it's a mix, and dang.
But you're right. No, and that call is not to pose any blame on those people. That's where they found themselves in. Those are the decisions they made, and then tragically, that's what happened. In that circumstance. Yeah.
Brian.
So the fixed line program for us has served us well in those types of environments. We need it for sure.
Yeah.
And it's available to us when we've got it. Man, maybe one day we'll have hoist capacity on the ski hill, but that would be quite a bit of program development there. And right now it's fixed line for us.
That's cool. It works. It works. I get it. I like.
And there's a huge for sure. And I learned that was a great lesson, because there's those that have hoist capacity, often that's the move, and they think that's the tool to be used. People that have fixed line think that's the tool, and maybe there often ends up being this sort of comparison between the two. And when I went over I took the Alpine HEMS course at Air Zermatt, which was an incredible experience, 7-day sort of rescue specialist course there, which is amazing. And it was really cool how they have both abilities, hoisting and fixed line, as we know, and they just simply look at the call and decide which is the appropriate tool. And so that was sort of a great marker for me to just be like, oh, right, it's not one or the other, it's what works best. And for us, the versatility of our fixed line kit, if you will, is it can go on any aircraft. We don't need special fixtures on a particular aircraft to do it. So we need a certified pilot, and we need an A-Star or a 407, and then our kit can go on any one of those aircraft. So I think that still is the smart way to have that capacity, because it keeps us the most versatile. There's a little bit more specialized equipment around that, that's got some advantages, but for the most part, the versatility, I think, wins that sort of argument for us.
Dude, that is sick. You see the same thing up in like the Himalayas too. They use the A-star long line. They
Sure.
get
Yeah.
way up, and then they drop the guys off and say, all right,
Yeah.
keep climbing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
But dude, sick.
That was a cool use of all our capacities. We had rope rescue ready to go. We had fixed line ready to go. We had all our medical capability there. We had a doctor, two ACP paramedics. She did get intubated on site. You know, she had the best chance of surviving that accident with the care she got. And unfortunately, I just don't think it was viable.
Yeah.
No matter what environment or amount of care she had available to her.
Yeah. Dang. Right
Yeah.
on. Well, good job to you and all the crew. Crews, plural.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And over the years, you know, that fixed line doesn't get used a lot, but I've been lucky enough to have several on my days that are memorable for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me check. Oh, look, I'm ready for another story.
You know, my first my first fixed line call was kind of funny. We had this late in the day, one of our chairlifts sort of ends, and then below it there is just this sort of steep mountain gully. It's maybe close to 1,000 feet into the valley, but then there's an exit road that takes you out back to the ski area. But the terrain below that sort of leaves the ski area, and there's not really any way out of there besides difficult navigation through these cliff bands and stuff. So sure enough, this teenager decides to go below the boundary to find some powder, and he gets lost and stuck. The call comes in for us that this teenager is missing. So we have fairly decent data that we know where they went, and this is pre-cell phone. It's quite a while ago. It's still in the 1900s, I think. And
I love how you said 1900s.
I think it's not. I know. I think it's 90. I think it was 99. I want to say it's 99. So myself and this other experienced ski patroller, we go up and we think, you know, it's going to be fairly simple. Some people located the ski tracks off the edge of the road, and there isn't a lot of them there, so you sort of get good index of suspicion that that's the right spot. So like, you know what, we'll probably ski down here, find this guy, hike him back up to the road, and we'll be done. So we go back up. It's dark. It's in December or something like that, so it's dark right away. We're on the track, we're moving along, then it turns into footsteps because the snowboarder, so he's been marching around, and then it goes up and down and across and back and forth and crosses other tracks, and we really have a hard time finding him. So sure enough, finally we do find this kid. He's now wet and cold, has been down there for a long time, and it's night. We don't have night capacity, so luckily we brought just enough to keep him warm: a sleeping bag, a mat, you know, candle, booties for him. So I want to say he's 16. He's from the city. He's actually relatively good natured. I'm not sure if he really knew the sort of like risk that he was
dilemma.
in. Didn't know the dilemma.
Survival situation that he was in.
So totally. I mean, I think for him, he's like, oh, 2 ski patrollers came over and put me to bed. You know, he got his wet boots off.
What a bunch of nice guys.
Put him in a sleeping bag, put him on a mat, and he basically fell asleep.
Do we get to
myself.
build an igloo now? Can I make a
No.
snowboard? This would be badass.
Yeah, we're in the trees. So we cut down a bunch of tree boughs for myself and my partner, Scott Brazell, longtime awesome ski patroller, super capable dude, longtime fireman now, career fireman. But we were still relatively new to ski patrolling back then. So now we're waiting for the morning, right? And it'll probably be a fixed line rescue out of there in the morning, but that's the move. He's too fatigued. It's too difficult to travel. Where he managed to get to would just be too difficult. Capable people could have slogged their way out of there, but he wasn't in a state to do that. So we elected to stay. Put him to bed. We spent a miserable night down there.
I'm sure it was, dude.
Puffy coat. Luckily, it wasn't super cold. I think the low was maybe -4 Celsius. Wasn't snowing. So we laid on some
survivable.
Yeah, we laid on some pine boughs, and we tossed and turned beside this guy with our candle going there. Interestingly enough, actually, we had an owl park in the candlelight on a branch and basically sat there and babysat us for most of the night. It was super cool. like some sort of spiritual safety element or something.
I like that.
So yeah, miserable night. Finally got we actually just got at about 3 a.m. I was sort of sitting there suffering. Scott had been in the military, so I was like, he's way tougher than me. Finally, I hear him cursing and rolling around, and he's like, I'm so freaking cold. This is ridiculous. And so we both got up and stomping our feet and warming our hands on the candle, and then we sort of dried out a little bit, a few sticks, and then we realized actually we got enough stuff dry that we could get a fire started. And so we were warming our hands, and we sat around the fire until daylight, which probably wasn't until maybe 7-ish a.m. because it was in the winter there, and then a fixed line out in the morning, 200-foot long line to get out of the canopy there. And so that was my very first fixed line rescue. So took the teenager out in an evac harness. He wasn't injured. He was just cold and tired. We woke him up in the morning. We're like, hey, you got to wake up. He's like, well, where am I? I don't want to go to school, Mom. And he had like a full night. He had a full night's sleep. And,
oh my God.
And Scott and I toughed it out.
16-year-old. What the heck, kid?
Yeah. So I exited him out in the morning. And that was my first fixed line experience, which was great. All turned out well.
It's super cool, man.
Formidable and great memory. But yeah, spending the night out, that sucks for sure. And luckily I haven't had to do that very much.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That was good.
And then to school, Mom.
Yeah, he was fully asleep. He just went to bed, slept through the night. Put on dry socks in the morning because we dried his boots out on the fire and socks out on the fire. So and then back then my boss was very thankful, so he bought myself and Scott both McGriddles from McDonald's in the morning to thank us. So that was very kind.
What a nice guy.
You remember those McGriddles?
I totally do. Yeah.
Egg McMuffin on a Eggo waffle.
Yeah. Like a 99
that's pretty much what it was.
Like
that's
right.
That's right. Yeah. So thanks for your service. Here's your McGriddle. But we were happy to do it. We're happy to do it.
Oh my God, I love
it. And then the next fixed line rescue that I did, this area called Pillow Biter, this sort of really rocky piece of terrain that's closed. Great name. Yeah. It's closed. It's got these big sort of snow mushrooms on almost a vertical surface of trees and rock outcrops. So there's these big snow mushrooms that we call pillows. And it can be inviting terrain above when you go through the closure, then it looks like it's good. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. Until you're completely stuck and you can't go up and you can't go down. And it would be easily 100-foot fall to a flat road below, so it could easily be fatal. So this guy's stuck on this sort of precarious snow mushroom, and he had thrown his ski. He had maybe even just lost his ski, and it ended up on the road below. And one of the ski patrollers on sweep. So at the end of the day, we ski all the ski runs to make sure there's no one out there and injured. And at the end of the day, the ski patroller skied by this road with a single ski laying on the road and no one around. But he curiously stopped and was like, what is this doing here? And then ended up making voice contact with this person and realized they're completely stuck. So that triggered a fixed line rescue there. And again, so precarious sort of rescue there to just be placed on this snow mushroom. Didn't know if maybe I'd need to rappel out of there or want to reposition, or wasn't even sure if the snow mushroom was going to feel stable enough not to be on belay there. So took some equipment in with me as well to potentially do what we needed to. Once I got on the snow mushroom, it felt relatively stable. And so I had the sort of this backpack connected to the long line, not with me, and I elected to sort of leave it on the long line as I prepped this guy with his evac harness. But I remember watching the sort of kit of rope and stuff sort of just pull back for the helicopter to do its circuit, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that was that smart to leave it there. Like if I need that, it's gonna be too late. And so looking back, maybe I should have taken that with me, but I didn't really want to complicate the scene either. Anyway, safely removed that guy, plucked him off of this snow mushroom. And that was my first fixed line rescue.
You got to give me a little more description of a snow mushroom. I mean, I'm thinking just of like a standard mushroom top, but it's a ball of snow that's
Yeah,
like
so like
around
for
a
us,
dome.
we're in what's called the coast mountains, and so our snow is relatively heavy compared to the rest of the province because we've got the big maritime influence, so lots of humidity, lots of thick wet snow
Okay.
happens, and so when it snows super hard, the trees and say rocky outcrops will hold these big the
Oh,
snow
the
will build up
dome, like
on them,
a dome
a big
on them.
dome. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
a
yeah,
big dome. And
yeah.
then as it sits, because snow is viscoplastic, it sort of bends and twists and looks a little bit like Dr. Seuss kind of
Yeah.
trees. And it'll sit on these rocks and sit in really precarious places because our snow is quite strong. So not unlike Alaska snowpack, you get sort of snow sticking to this like incredibly steep and complex terrain. And so sure enough, that's he was on this snow mushroom on a rock and kind of part of a little tree island that
Cool.
put him in this spot. So the pilot that did that rescue used to be a ski patroller as well. We actually have a number, like I said, of ski patrollers turned pilots. And he was a really great mentor of mine too. He was sort of the rock and roll ski patroller when I started. He drove snowcats. He was a lift mechanic, smoked drum cigarettes, did all the rescues. He's awesome dude. His name's Greg Andrews. So shout out to Greg, who actually works on and off for Blackcomb Helicopters now and has been around the world working and stuff. But early on there, he's still a ski patroller. We were avalanche partners in 1998. We were doing avalanche control together. So we were moving through after a big storm, the terrain that is generally open to the public. But before that happens, we need to do avalanche control, and we'll use explosives and or ski through sort of areas that we think might have avalanches, that could be started by skiers. So we need to start those avalanches or at least mitigate them before public's allowed to ski there. So that's how we and what the purpose of us doing avalanche control. So Greg and I were on
So
this
cool,
avalanche.
by the way.
Yeah.
So cool.
Greg and I were on this avalanche control route. He was the route leader. I was quite young back then, and he was super experienced. And we were moving through this terrain, and it was a fair amount of hazard. It snowed quite a bit overnight, like probably close to 30 centimeters, almost 12 inches. And it was sort of warming, so that the hazard was a little tricky to be sure of how the snow was going to behave. And so we're moving down this gully, and we put in an explosive up higher and triggered some snow. And then we're moving through this gully, and we had what's called a convexity. So the terrain sort of gets steeper and steeper as it goes. And obviously there's a lot of tension on the snow as it sort of sits on these convexities because gravity's trying to pull it off. And so we had this convexity below us, and that's a typical zone that would be what we'd call a start zone, a place that an avalanche could happen. And there was enough snow there that there could be a decent size avalanche. So we threw one explosive down there, and it went off, but we can't really see over the edge, over this convexity. So we typically move from safe spot to safe spot. So I was parked in the rocks in a safe location, and then as we do, Greg was like, hey, I'll move through this lower convexity and I'll ski cut what wasn't triggered by the explosive, and I'll move to my next safe spot, and I'll give you a call, and then you can come ski down. And that's sort of how we move through terrain when we can't maintain visual contact with each other. So he moved over to the edge. Requisite amount of time went by for him to typically get to the next safe spot, and I didn't hear from him. So I called him on the radio, and he didn't answer. And I called him on the radio again, and he didn't answer. And so I was like, this doesn't quite seem right. So I moved farther down the slope where I could get a visual over this convexity. And as I came over the edge, I saw a significant size avalanche, what we'd call a size 2, so big enough to bury or injure a person. And the debris out in the sort of valley or bowl below, a significant amount of debris down below. And I was like, oh, that's been triggered. And he's not answering. He's likely been caught. That's what happened. That's what's happened. So yeah, pretty harrowing experience for me, for sure. One of my most, really, when I think back to avalanche, my experiences with avalanches and people getting caught, my most harrowing for sure. I made the call on the radio, which we utilize a code called code alpha. It simply means there's been an avalanche and someone's involved. So, but we were on avalanche control, so there's not a lot of other people around, right? Where everything's closed because we're moving through these areas using explosives. So the next closest bowl had another group of 2 they were working over there doing the same thing we were. But so I called out Code Alpha, and then I pulled my transceiver out. So we wear a electronic device that lets us home in on the other person's signal, for those that don't know how that works. So every person wears this electronic device that's giving out a signal, a tracking signal.
Okay.
And then if you want to find someone's signal, you can take your device and turn it to what's called the search mode. And now it starts picking up the signals of someone else's that's on send mode, if you will. So I'm skiing down this slope, but there's also still this thing that we call hang fire. So the avalanche has occurred, but there's still more snow available to also fracture and flow down as well. So I don't want to,
God, dude.
So I don't want to get caught myself. So I sort of moved in this, what's called ski cutting. Like I put my skis into the above terrain that still had snow on it to ski cut the rest of this hang fire, this hanging snow that might maybe catch and bury me as well. So I sort of got a reasonable result out of there. And then it started moving down the bed surface where the snow had slid. So there's really no more hazard, with my transceiver out, getting ready to go utilize this sort of grid search pattern to try and find my buried partner. And so super energetic, pretty easily one of the highest, sort of stakes situations I've been in. My partner's buried, and the clock is ticking. And when I looked down to the bottom of the debris, I saw his hand push through the snow. And so a huge amount of relief to not have to, what can be a time-consuming process, to search him out with my transceiver. So now I know where he is, thank goodness. So I'm able to go straight there. He's able to sort of dig part of his face out and be able to breathe okay. Pretty much right when I arrived, the other team was able to traverse across and join us and dig him out fully. And he had broken his ankle and hurt his back, and but luckily otherwise not injured and not buried, such that he was in a place that he could have suffocated, and we were there fast enough and able to find him fast enough that we extricated him safely there. But he was injured. It ended his ski patrol career, and he went on to be a pilot. And we used to joke around. He's like, one day, Fishy, people call me Fishy because of my last name there. He's like, I'll be the pilot, you'll be the rescue tech, we'll be doing longline rescues together, And he was an optimistic dude, and sure enough, like many years later, because he went and got his pilot's license, worked for a bunch of different companies, broke into the industry as you do. It takes quite a while in Canada to get to that level. And then sure enough, he's back working for Blackcomb Helicopters. He's a certified rescue pilot, and there we are doing exactly what he claimed, these fixed line rescues together. So yeah, he's a great friend, awesome mentor. And then to fast forward even that, he found himself working at another company in the wildfire rappel program that I worked with. And we spent a summer doing sort of pilot / hoist rappel technician firefighting together. So we've had this convoluted interwoven relationship that's super special to me. And yeah, I guess fast forward to the next crazy story. In Alaska, we had an engine failure together.
What?
And had that, the two of us had that. So we are brothers, to say the least. And yeah, he is an incredible friend, and we've shared some wild experiences together.
Well, let's go.
Do we just segue?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm
straight into
I'm jonesing right now.
So I'm ski patrolling, and I love my winter job, but I don't have a good summer job. Friends of mine, a couple friends of mine were wildfire fighters in the summer. That seemed awesome. Particularly this woman, Jen Walker, who is like another really great mentor of mine, ski patrolling, and this sort of superstar mountain woman that I really looked up to. She got hired at the BC Wildfire Service RAPATTACK program. So that's their province-wide rappel remote access wildfire program that is sort of long history, revered, sort of military style training, difficult to get to get hired on. So she's doing that. So I'm enthralled by that. I think that's super cool. I had seen it as a kid in a magazine. I was like, man, that's a cool job. So now I'm ski patrolling in the winter. I need a good summer job. I start trying to be a wildfire fighter. It takes me like 3 tries to be a wildfire fighter. Finally, I end up getting hired, and sure enough, I get accepted to this RAPATTACK program. So now I go through the training, and I'm lucky enough to pass. And I'm now a rappel wildfire fighter, which is also a formative part of my career and really triggered off my career in helicopter work. I guess from there was the RAPATTACK program. A super special place for me. Formed so many of my sort of risk management viewpoints, incredible people, incredible mentors, crazy experiences. So in what is that, I'll be guessing maybe 2011, for a few years, Alaska gets these dry fire seasons. They'd love to have rappel access. They do have smoke jumpers. Are they based up there? They might come up from the lower 48. But
I'm not sure, but I'm going to go with whatever you tell me. How's that?
I can't remember if they're stationed up. There might be a crew up there. My U.S. friends. Sorry if I'm butchering that. But so they've got smoke jumper access, but they'd also love to have rappel crews up there when they're busy and it's dry and they need the resources. So, but they don't. It's not the frequency up there, and the commonality of needing that isn't that such that they're going to stand up a full program. So an agreement gets launched with British Columbia's RAPATTACK program for us to go and support them there. And cool. And so that had been happening for the last few years. And so sure enough, I'm lucky enough to be one of the people on rotation. At this point, I'm deep enough in my wildfire career that I'm now a hoist operator rappel technician. So the person in the aircraft deploying other rappel crews and doing general fire operations like that. We get dispatched to Alaska. And so myself and Greg, this pilot that was in the Avalanche, is now working for the company that provides the service there. And we find ourselves in Alaska firefighting together, and we're loving it. And we're, he's like, look at us. He's like, we didn't even steal this thing. We're just racing around Alaska, having the time of our lives. And
that's freaking badass, dude.
we got no business living like this, right? we're counting moose and having a great time and firefighting away. And we've been cutting helipads for this large campaign fire that we've been assisting. So rappelling crews in and they've been putting in helipads so the regular ground crews have more access. And so our morning task was to rappel a crew, put them in a spot that they can start cutting a helipad, and then we're supporting that crew and the rest of the fire with tanking operations, so dropping water from a belly tank in the firefighting helicopter. And we're doing that. We had just got fuel, and we found this small lake that we're tanking out of. So you hover, like basically right at lake level, and this long snorkel. You've seen the heli tankers, but for those that don't know that, helicopters can deliver water in 2 ways, either on the bucket, the orange bucket usually that people have seen hanging well below the helicopter, or a tank that's fixed to the helicopter that holds 300 gallons. And it sucks water up through this sort of long snorkel, like an 8-foot snorkel or something. So you end up hovering like 3 or 4 feet off the water to collect your water, go fly back to the fire, drop it, and do that again. And you go round and round and round and do that. And so we're on the water, picking up a load. And I'll never forget the sound of one. So we're flying in a 212, so twin engine aircraft, but needs both engines to fly for the most part. I'll never forget the sound of one engine decelerating to idle within the sound of 2 engines running, right? So there's sort of, and everyone that's a helicopter person sort of knows the sound of a helicopter that's running well and the way that sounds. And then suddenly this deceleration of a single engine. And of course the rotor horn goes off. Dude. And and he's like, oh, we've lost an engine. He punches the load right away. But we sink onto the water, and the helicopter sits on the water. Skids go in the water. We're on the belly tank, and in those very short seconds, I was like, "I'm going to be in a helicopter crash. Like we've lost an engine, and we're going to crash." And it doesn't happen. He's able to limp away on a single engine. We're in ground effect, luckily. Dumps the load of water, so we lose all the weight. we're in ground effect, and luckily we've got like a decent breeze, so I think that was assisting us a little bit to be able to stay airborne on one engine. And we limp, I don't know, maybe 100 meters down the shoreline to the swampy edge of the lake, and we land there in the muskeg. So those that know what muskeg is, basically like thick enough moss that it looks like ground, but it's essentially floating on water. So it's just this mushy, squishy terrain that is not suitable to land a helicopter. So we do land. Yeah, totally. So we do land there, and so impressed with Greg's sort of state of mind and flying ability there. He comes down. We can't come down to an idle, so we're sitting in this sort of muskeg, but we're sunk into the soft, wet moss. We run down, and he does his sort of diagnostics, and he's like, "Okay, one engine's down. We're not on fire. One engine is running and seems to be running fine. All indications is it's running fine, but we can't shut down there because we'd tip over in the moss. Like we'd just sink in and tip over." So I'm like, "Greg, like, what are you thinking?" And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "So one engine's down. That's fine. Shut off. One engine's running." He's like, I gotta move the aircraft, everything out. And he's like Clint Eastwood. Greg Andrews like Clint Eastwood. He's just like he's sort of this cool mountain dude. He's like, everything out. I mean, everything. So I get out of the front seat and I climb into the back. We're on an idle. I open both sliding doors of the 212. All our firefighting equipment out into the swamp. Maps, sat phone, like, and he's like, everything. And so all our equipment gets tossed out into the swamp. And I'm like I can probably walk my way through the bush. So down this lake, luckily on the lake that we were choosing to grab water from in that particular case is an actual built heli. So they felled some trees, and there's a decent landing spot where fire crews had been staging, and there was equipment. So you could land and shut down at this fire helipad. He's like, "I'm going to try and get back to that pad." And I'm like, "Okay, do you want me to try and walk, or do you want me to stay with you?" He's like, I wouldn't mind actually, you just stay with me and you can help me watch gauges and stuff and clearances. I'm like, okay. And so he spools up on one engine, and now we're suctioned into the moss, right? Because we're down in the water. So he's able to sort of unsuction the aircraft out of this position. We get airborne into ground effect, and luckily it's upwind to the helipad, so we're able to just ground effect, coast, limp our way back down the lake. I want to say it was maybe mid-morning, like 11 o'clock or something. So there was a decent breeze. And when I look back now, it was really important to us to be able to limp on one engine like that. You know?
Yeah.
And the direction.
412 on one engine.
Yeah,
Doesn't happen.
A 212 HP, not a DF machine at that point. That aircraft now is DF, but it wasn't at the time. And so we limp back to this helipad, and we land, and we shut down, and we're just like, whoa. And he's cool. He's cool as a cucumber. I'm energized. And I was like, how can Greg be just so calm? And I remember he went to lean over and make a sat phone call to the carrier and start thinking about how we're going to get this aircraft out and what's happened, and notify the dispatch and all that. But he reaches over to use the sat phone, and his hand's shaking a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay, he's human. He's, that was an energetic experience for him as well, like his shaky hand. And that's like, okay, it makes me feel a little bit better. We get out the other fire crews, the Alaskan fire crews are there. The machine shuts down. They're like, whoa, man, like what happened? We saw this puff, and then we sort of heard this noise and watched you guys coast around the corner and disappear. We're like, what the hell happened? He didn't really say much of anything. And he's sort of a non-smoker at that point. He's always been a non-off smoker, but he's a non-smoker at that point. He's quit, and he just gets out. They're like, everyone's sort of crowded around, sort of high energy kind of conversation, people being like this, that, the other thing. He just doesn't say a word, quite calmly says, "Does anyone here smoke?" And they're just like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "I'll take one." And then so we're shut down. We're safe. The problem solved. We've sort of made the calls. We climb up on the aircraft. He opens up some cows and stuff. He's like, "I'm just gonna have a little sit down." So we sit on top of this aircraft in the remote Alaska wilderness, and he has a cigarette, and we share that moment together, and we sort of come down together after that. And we've talked fondly about that since. Yeah, crazy. That was a crazy experience. If we rewind a little bit to sort of human performance risk reaction to problems and stuff on a bigger conversation, we had done, I think every 2 or 3 years we did Hewitt training there at the RAPATTACK program, so underwater helicopter egress training, right? So those that have done it know what it is. Yeah, of course. Those that don't, you can sort of simulate it in a pool. We had this basic cage that sort of represented a fuselage, and you can put it in the shallow end of a local pool, and you get in your seat, and you wear your seatbelt, and you get tipped over. And it's a way to practice for people that work in helicopters to potentially do the best case version of surviving being tipped over in a helicopter. And that's stay in your seat, orientate your exit, open up your exit, then come out of your seatbelt, and then make your move to exit the aircraft. And it's quite a critical, right? As you know, it's sort of critical to do that. If you come out of your seatbelt and get disorientated in the upside down dark fuselage, you're going to die from that. You're not going to find an exit point. So, and we had done that, I think, that spring. So I was current as of that year, having done that. When we sat in the water with the engine decel there, and I was like, "Oh, we're like, if we continue to decelerate, we're going to tip over. We're going to rotor strike the water. It's going to get super violent, and it's going to be a crash." And so we sat in the water, and then so those seconds, which probably was less than 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity there. You're like, I'm in a helicopter crash. I remember reaching for my seatbelt, and all I could think about was like, I'm getting out of this freaking aircraft. Like, I'm getting out right now. And that's what I'm going to do. And so I broke all the rules of stop, wait for things to stop moving, landmark your exit, use your seat. I failed miserably on my intentions. I didn't undo my seatbelt because we sort of were able to keep flying, but in my sort of panicked state, even with training, I didn't perform. And it's a bit of it's super humbling, and it's a good recognition that it takes a lot of training to lock in those type of behaviors when your reptilian brain is sort of going against that. Yeah,
bro, that is crazy.
Alaska.
That's crazy awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it ended up being a fuel starvation problem. So the engine wasn't wrecked. It didn't like, we didn't blow it up or anything. So it ended up getting fixed in the field. Engineers came out to the field able to fix it. They actually bore scoped the engine in the field.
Cool.
Wow. So those that don't know that, they put a camera inside the intricate parts of the helicopter engine to make sure there's no internal damage, which there wasn't. And so they were able to start it up, and they flew it out at 1:00 in the morning because it was daylight up there in Alaska. Then the next day, and we were back in service in less than 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Kept going. Yeah.
Jeez.
So man. That's one of a formidable experience in wildfire.
Oh my god.
Doing it with some good friends.
Yeah. Dude, you've had one heck of a good career. That's super fun.
It's been super diverse, and I'm super grateful for the combination of this sort of specialty helicopter work and wildfire fighting, along with just wildfire fighting in general. Those that have done it know that it's its own animal. And then ski patrolling in the winter. And so I had these two awesome seasonal jobs that had, sort of similarities with respect to how you sort of carry them out: risk management, teamwork, communication, all the things. And fast forward 26, I did that for wildfire fought for 17 years. And still ski patrolling for 26, and you're just like, oh right, okay, I guess this is how it goes. I do this for this long, but it's so engaging.
Out of curiosity, did you have any rescues or anything that happened to any of the guys during firefighting while you were longlining and short hauling and rappelling in?
Yeah, we did have a few. So I want to say it's 1994, the RAPATTACK program sought out, I think it was LA City Fire, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been county. I think it was City Fire at the time, to look into what it would be like to provide hoist, build a hoist program around the wildfire RAPATTACK rappel program. And sure enough, they were successful in that. So then when I came onto the program in 2000, there was hoisting there, but we primarily used it for potential rescue and extraction out of really remote areas. Instead of cutting a helipad or doing a long walkout, we were starting to utilize the hoist more for like egress out of these remote wildfires. And we had sort of
because real quick, let me throw this out there for those that don't understand, is you can rappel in quite fast. And if you set up the helicopter right, you've got what's known as the fries bar, which is attached to the ceiling, and you can send it out both sides of the aircraft. So you have doors on both sides. So you can literally send down like 2, maybe even 4 dudes at the same time. Be like, roll up into a hover, rappel a bunch of dudes out, you're on the ground, bada bing, bada boom. It's so much faster than hoisting. But at the same time, hoisting, you're just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many guys you get down.
You're totally correct on that. So the BC RAPATTACK program is a single person at a time out of the left side, but off of a rappel bar. The aero design rappel arm, which is really nice device there. And we're on Sky Genies for those.
Slide the bar out, put the pin back in.
That's right. Yeah.
I love it.
So rappel out, because you can rappel really quickly. So 3 people rappel out on a single rope, drop that rope. Then there's 2 170-pound gear bags in the back that end up on this cargo arm, suspended outside the aircraft, and they get rappelled out on their own individual ropes. And so BC is super rugged, really mountainous, lots of timbered terrain and lots of really valuable timber, because logging is a huge part of the industry here. So we're not only trying to sort of protect, sort of structures and values from wildfire, we're also actually trying to not lose timber value. So there's, long history of wildfire fighting here, and remote access. Recognize that if we don't get there within a decent amount of time, these fires are so much more difficult to manage. So if we've got a rappel crew that can quickly dispatch to a small lightning strike fire in really remote terrain and be able to suppress that before it gets a big head of steam and a bunch of energy built up, that's sort of the best suppression method. So that's why the rappel program exists. So that's been since 1972, 73 is when it first started. So it's a long history. 94, hoisting comes into play. I started in 2000, the hoist exists. We use it mostly for extraction. I'm on a fire in the East Kootenays, for those that know Canada, near Fairmont. And we're working on big campaign fires, so multiple crews over big distances. So lots of machines and truck access and 20-person crews working, and we're there supporting helipads and firefighting in general with all this, there's probably 100 people or something working on this fire. We get a call, someone's been injured up this cat line. So where a machine had sort of pushed into the forest to make some fire guard. And we go, we respond because we're sort of the closest crew, but we respond by truck and then walk up there. But I remember just thinking, I was like, okay, well, if we go in there and this person's injured and it needs to be potentially a hoist rescue, I better bring my equipment. I better bring my rappel stuff with me, my harness.
Yeah.
So I march in with that with some other first aid crew, and we find this gentleman that had sort of slipped off the slippery, muddy embankment, and he's sort of his feet whipped out from underneath him, and then he fell on this sort of 6-inch small stump, like right on his lower back, and he was actually showing some spinal deficits at the time, so he had numbness and tingling in his legs, and so an assessment there would have showed, you're like, okay, here's an injured guy that likely has some sort of spinal injury. And this would be a super long carry all the way down this machine built cat road to a place where you could get a truck, and then a long drive on fire road till you could meet an ambulance. You're like, this is going to be a hoist rescue for sure. So we sort of pull the trigger on that and get him packaged up and hoist him out off of this cat guard, and we're able to fly him to the closest staging area, met an ambulance. And luckily for him, I think he had a lumbar fracture, like compression fracture, but luckily just the energy of the fall caused sort of just temporary numbness and tingling and sort of neuro symptoms. And so he made a full recovery. And wasn't paralyzed, luckily. But in the moment, we didn't know what was happening, so it was a pretty serious call. But it turns out that's the first hoist rescue in the history of the RAPATTACK program.
Oh, sick, dude!
So yeah, so get to be a part of that program. And so it's a little bit of a it was, in the overall bigger part of the Forest Service that was what would you call it? Yeah, just a notable event of utilizing that capability that had always been there for the intention of being able to provide rescue. And sure enough, it sort of went well, and it went smoothly, and thanks to the training, so there was sort of good feedback and usage of that. And so we were proud to be able to provide that service to the rest of the wildfire program who doesn't have Rappel. It's a centralized program that serves the whole province. But it's just three specialty aircraft and just 12 at the time 3-person crews. So it's sort of a specialty group there, and there's a lot of pride in unit, and we're really happy for what we train for all the time to work well and serve that patient's needs in the best way possible. Yeah, so really proud to be a part of that one.
That is super
and actually
cool, man.
Did that because that was only my second year there, so I was the one smart enough to bring my rappel gear. But a more senior person, actually, that woman that I ski patrolled with, that I admired so much, that went to RAPATTACK, that sort of caused me to get there. She was with me, so we had we'd done lots of ski patrol calls together. So the first aid went well, and then she put my harness on and did the rescue, and I did the tag lining.
Super
for
cool.
it, yeah.
And the guy made a full recovery, which is
great.
Amazing.
He did, yeah, he did, yeah.
Well done.
And, so there you go.
That's cool.
First ever. And then over my career there, I've been lucky to be a part of a number of rescues. They don't happen too often. We did some civilian rescue. We used to do some interface with the ambulance service before they sort of opened the provincial ambulance service. Opened a base in Kamloops, one of the interior towns. So now they've got sort of a primary, like, scene response helicopter, but we still will respond in some rescues. And we did a number for some firefighters. Did tree planter that stepped on a log and it dislodged and rolled over him, and he had a bunch of compression fractures. And we were able to rappel out and hoist him. Did a guy with just a knee injury, but he was a long way from being, to be able to walk out. Part of a guy that got the initial call, we thought he got struck by lightning, which was like full on. But it ended up, when we responded, you're like, oh man, going to a lightning strike, you're trying to think back of your first aid training, you're like, exit wounds, cardiac issues, 3rd-degree burns, fluid loss, it's like, oh my gosh, what's this going to be like? He was in super close proximity to a lightning strike that struck a tree, and they were working on this really steep sort of shale rocky slope, and the lightning strike itself sort of knocked him off his feet. So he didn't get struck by lightning, but the strike was close enough that the concussion from it all knocked him off his feet, and he ended up having a bad enough fall that he had also hurt his back quite badly. So he turned into a hoist rescue as well from that.
Brian.
Yeah, dude, it just goes on. Yeah. Not to mention all these, lots of rappels just into really crazy remote places in British Columbia, just to simply action wildfires and work with incredible people and be super, super tired.
God, man, I love what we do, dude. It's sick.
Yeah, it really is unique, and I guess. I see all these people that you interview doing incredible rescue work around the world, and way more rescue work than I do. I just count myself. It's just such a privilege to be part of the unique opportunity that utilizes helicopters to do good work.
Yeah.
And it's always that's just been a draw for me. It's just been a real draw, and I'm honored to be in it. And then the RAPATTACK program and hoist operating, there's not a lot of hoisting in Canada. There's the military. There's a police organization back in Quebec that's been doing it for, like, the Quebec police have been doing it actually for quite some time, I think since 2000. Okay. Our Royal Canadian Mounted Police have just stood up a single hoist aircraft in the Lower Mainland in just the last several years. Nice. So Wildfire RAPATTACK program has had hoisting be part of their sort of skill set for a long time, but it's quite unique. And so those of us that worked there are really the only hoist kind of people coming into the rest of the industry with hoisting experience. So a really lucky position to be in. And then awesome. One of the helicopter companies that had the contract for wildfire fighting, and that we worked with closely, they sort of knew the capacity of hoisting. So the owner of that company, reached out to the hydro world, which they had been doing quite a bit of different type of hydro work and looking at what the needs might be there. And they introduced hoisting into the hydro world. So now for us in Canada, there's a couple companies, including Blackcomb Helicopters, that provides hoist work access to the power line industry. Oh, so right moving guys on and off of the high voltage power lines and or the conductors to do maintenance and general inspection work and stuff like that. So that's really where my hoist work comes from now. The work in the power line industry for hoisting, and then a little bit of rescue on the side. Sweet, man.
Like, I've done a little bit of training with the long line stuff, doing short haul and whatnot to the power lines. But
right.
Yeah. No, I get it. All right, I'll tell you what, man.
Cool. It's been going.
We've been rolling.
Non-stop.
I'm like, I can't get enough of this. It's like ridiculous. There is kind of a higher profile case that or rescue, I should say. Actually, there's two of them that I want to talk about. And one of them in particular was the Winter Olympics that were up in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
What, I mean, talk about an ultimate stage to have it happen and stuff to go right in your favor. I mean, again, bummer for the skier got hurt, but what the heck happened? How did you even get called for that? That's like crazy.
Yeah, right. So a highlight of my career for sure. 2010, Vancouver Whistler combination wins the bid for the Winter Olympics. So a bunch of the events are in Vancouver, and the downhill skiing is in Whistler, and a bunch of the freestyle skiing and ski cross and stuff is on some local hills. So the downhill skiing is happening in Whistler, actual famous downhill course from the World Cup back in the day, no longer on the circuit, but a really revered downhill course, considered one of the harder on the circuit back in the day. So it's here. So then you're like, okay, well, what's rescue going to look like around that? And of course, we know in Europe, that's what they always do. They use fixed line or hoist to rescue skiers. Lake Louise, another ski area in Canada that has always been still is on the World Cup downhill and Super G ski racing circuit, has a long history, and they utilize those Parks Canada rescue technicians that I was mentioning earlier, and they do fixed line rescue there. And as far as I understand, FIS, the overarching ski racing federation, as well as the Olympic Federation, they mandate that you've got helicopter egress ability during these races. So you're like, okay, so it's going to be fixed line rescue. So then who's going to do it? Is it going to be paid? Is Parks Canada going to come and do it? How's that going to happen? And it turns out that it's going to be a volunteer opportunity. That turns into like a little bit of a strange element, because a number of the sort of, experienced rescue technicians from around the valley here, most of them ski patrol and otherwise, they were doing lots of fixed line rescue, kind of were like, you know what, like, this is a specialty skill. Like I want to get paid for this. And so there was almost this, consideration of sort of a boycott or something where they're like, they need to pay us, so we're not going to do it. And then they're kind of going to be stuck, and they're going to have to pay us. The pilots are getting paid. And I'm sort of back and forth. I see both sides of the stories. And I'm just like, such a rescue nerd. I'm just like, man, this just seems, I just want to be a part of this. I'm gonna volunteer my time. And that was not without some criticism from people. You're like a bit sort of scabbish, maybe, right? You're like, oh well, now if someone's gonna do it, then there's no opportunity for us to.
Right,
so yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I
you
did it
either
anyways.
all need to come together and say
exactly.
no right from the get-go,
I guess right. So apologize to those
you
people that think maybe
everybody. Nice job.
Yeah. I apologize to those people that think it was the wrong idea. I selfishly, I just really wanted to be a part of it, and I was lucky enough to get picked for the team to do that among some other really experienced people, and it turned out to be worth every penny I didn't make.
That's awesome.
so that sort of came together.
Hashtag worth it.
Yeah, totally. So the policy was that you run a World Cup event the year ahead as a trial. So we did a trial run on the World Cup that came here. Was it the year before? Maybe 2 years before. And we did that. Blackcomb Helicopters was the aircraft provider, and then coupled with the volunteers, some of us were connected to the company that manufactures the fixed line equipment in Canada as well. So Mergeco being the kit we used there. And I sort of built this sort of preparation around that. And so sure enough, 2010 shows up, and there was a 4 or 5 of us that were on rotation as rescue technicians. And I was lucky enough to be on the women's downhill day of the race as the staged rescuer. So we had the aircraft sort of parked just a little distance away from the main grandstand and the finish line, and we'd fly up each morning and sort of recce the course. There's like comms lines and cables and other things. So we'd recce the course, make sure we sort of were landmarked appropriately to where we couldn't do rescue any hazards. And then we park, aircraft's rigged, and we're just waiting. And I'm standing in the finish line, like inside the security corral, watching all. And I'm a huge fan of ski racing. Watching all the greatest ski racers in the world do their thing with big jumbotron and dressed in a harness, ready to go. Most people, I think, thought we were window washers or something, which was totally fine. And we watch on the jumbotron, and this woman, her name's Edith Mikalos. I think she's Bulgarian. If I get that wrong, apologize for those that know who she was. She has a nasty crash, ways up the ski hill, crashes into the fences, and she's injured. I think quite a bad knee injury. So we watch that happen, and there's ski patrollers staged all down the course that respond on skis, and there's doctors that respond. But the egress, partly really everything, the granddaddy of the Olympics, I realize, is live TV coverage. So it's all about the TV timing. So they want everyone out of there so that don't have this big TV delay. As well, there's so much netting and communication cables to exit the actual course itself and get onto another ski run is basically impossible to toboggan them down like you would normal sort of ski patrol rescue of a person that's not critically injured. But so everything was fixed line off the ski hill because they just wanted it to be quick. So we watched this happen. We're like, okay, she's definitely not skiing out on her own, so this is going to be a rescue. So we'll walk over to the aircraft, get spooled up. We're in a twin star at that point, so spool up. I'm on the end of the line. I'm like, I guess this is happening. Like here we go. Am I ready? I better be ready. And the course is, so those that don't know downhill ski racing as well, they water inject the course with water. So it's basically frozen ice. It's as hard as they possibly can make it. So you're not walking around in ski boots on a course like this. So you're wearing crampons to be able to walk on the ski hill. So crampons on, ready to go. Aerial evacuation platform and lift off behind this tree island. And then as we lift up and come off the ground, I think we're just using a 125-foot line there. Might even been shorter than that. And we come into view of the massive Olympic grandstands. I don't know how many people are in the grandstands, but it's full on Olympics. And then there's the massive media corral down below and hundreds of long white 300 mil zoom lenses from all of the media from around the world. And I come up from behind the tree island, and I look to the grandstands, and I'm just like, this is the Olympics. I'm doing this at the Olympics. Like, it really was a meaningful moment to me. And then I see every single lens there turn and point at me. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Do not
this is on
screw
camera.
this up. Do not screw
This
this
is on
up.
camera. I was like, don't pick your nose. Don't fumble. So anyways, luckily we go and land. The pilot, who most people would agree is sort of the Obi-Wan Kenobi of longlining, guy named Paul Copeland, just an absolute wizard, set down so gently, such a calm demeanor, just a really, really great airman. Set down gently, no stumbling, get to the side of the run. The ski patrollers have sort of already prepped this person. She's got a knee injury. She's otherwise not stable. So the pressure's sort of off with respect to like patient management. She just needs to be evacuated. So we get her loaded up in the stretcher and back on the into position to receive the long line. Again, Paul Copeland, the hook just comes in and it is just like direct to the hand, super smooth. Make the connection and we're gone. Up and out of there, back to staging, land. So we had two options too. We could fly to this remote trauma center that they had built, like a military style trauma center, or we could just go back to staging for non-critical and they would get ambulance access from there. So the call itself wasn't particularly complex, but being a part of the only longline rescue in the Olympics there, it was an incredible opportunity for me. Really, really proud to have been a part of that. And again, looking into it, like stumbled into it, nerdily, just wanted to do it, wanted to be a part of it. Very lucky to be one of the people on, like it could have been any one of the other rescuers, you know, I just happened to be on the day that it happened. And I was sort of first up rescuer. And wow. And that all happened. That's and cool. It went smoothly. And maybe the corollary to that story, which is was super special for me. We finished that day. Obviously it was a buzz. It was a great day. The Americans cleaned up, by the way. Lindsey Vonn, I think, took the gold, and Julia Mancuso. So the Americans took all the medals. Yeah, took all the medals away, which is fine. They're spectacular athletes. But
Team America, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the day finishes. I finished at the heliport, put our stuff away. We're going to do it again the next day for the Super G or whatever. I drive home. Everything's closed up here. There's really no vehicle access, but we were able to move around. I get back to my house, have a quick shower. I run down to the bus stop because there's buses every 5 minutes, and you go back into the village where the massive party is happening, and you connect with all your friends and you have the Olympic experience, which I was loving each day. I was just like out at night, you know, sort of partying with the Olympics and all these friends, having these incredible experiences, doing this really meaningful and cool work. So I jump on the bus. I'm buzzing by myself. I headed back into the village to meet some friends. Sit down beside this couple, this guy, dad and his son. His son's, I don't know, 10 or something like that. You're like, hey, how was your day? Yeah, cool. What events did you go to? Because there's events happening all the time. It's like, we're at the women's downhill. It's like, oh, that's so cool. That was amazing. Congratulations. The Americans cleaned up. They're from California, like really nice people. I asked, engaged the son, and like, what was your favorite part of the race today? I assumed it was going to be his two American superstars, like gold and silver. I was like, what was your favorite part of the day? And he looks at me, he's like, the man on the end of the helicopter. And I'm like, awesome. I was like, this young boy, like sort of vibrant, like me with my uncle who's a fireman, right? Like sort of just and maybe enthralled by what that all means. Like that was the thing that caught his eye. And I was like, well, funny thing, that was me. That was me on the end of the long line doing that rescue. And, you know, sort of his dad was interested, and then we chatted, helicopter rescue and details around that. Into the village, 10 minutes sort of bus ride and high five on the way out. And who knows where that kid is now, and if that stuck, but maybe like me, that was ignition, of who knows, maybe he's a Coast Guard swimmer. I don't know. But it was really meaningful for me in the moment where I was just like, I'm lucky to be here. I'm lucky that my DNA found itself to the West Coast of Canada, to parents that let me be a ski bum, that turned into a career, that turned into being the person that gets to have those type of experiences. And if that translates to another young person that gets inspired by the opportunities, the really, really satisfying and meaningful opportunities that come from this industry that we're all in.
Yeah.
What a privilege. That's all I really can say about that. What a privilege to pass on that stuff. but yeah, that little kid, he was just like the guy on the end of the long line. Super cool.
Dude, that is insane. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that Olympic experience was unbelievable. Yeah, just such an incredible time.
Dude, congratulations again. Great job, you and the crew, everybody on scene, on board. And I get it, like super easy, benign rescue, but super high profile. And you're like,
high profile. And as you well know, the freaking devil's in the details in this work, right?
Yeah,
the devil's in the details. It's like, land smoothly, don't trip on your crampons, smooth to the carabiner, don't rush, slow it down. No fumbly hands on the, we've all seen it with the hoist hook and the carabiners. Like, you can just get fumbly when you're trying to be quick. And I was like, just be slow, be smooth.
Yeah.
Don't have someone show you your video afterwards. You just be like, God, I look like a spaz doing
that. Bro, that's awesome. Oh, that's great.
Great. The Olympics were amazing.
Very cool.
And with people that I still work with now. So, with fond memories of that stuff.
Very cool. Again, congratulations and well done to you and your entire crew, the whole group.
Yeah, well, thanks to the people that chose me as to be one of the people to get the chance to do that.
That's freaking badass, man. I love that. You get time for one more?
Yeah, we're all right, cool.
Now. We are rolling. Yeah. So you well, I have an article here, and it's pretty cool. This is out of CBC News, British Columbia, and the headline: world-class skier bounces back after traumatic brain injury thanks to breakthrough treatment. And the cool part about this is you're in this picture on headline news on the toboggan, basically straddling the patient, helping her out, or him out. I don't even know, him or her.
A female
helping her out. Like, what is this? So world-class skier, number one, awesome. Traumatic brain injury, not awesome. And you're there to help her get to a rescue or save her life.
Yeah. So that's that's easily 7 years, if not 7 years ago. So in the spring at Whistler Blackcomb, it's not as big as it doesn't really exist much anymore, but for a number of years there's this thing called the World Ski and Snowboard Festival. So this big spring festival, bunch of entertainment, bunch of big snow sport events. So a high level ski cross event, high level what's called slope style event. So those of you that watch the X Games, big jumping competition, so freestyle jumping competition, both skiers and snowboarders. And at this stage of the game, this festival was sort of the place to be. People from around the world would come. The top athletes were there, and the Ski Patrol provided first aid for coverage for that as well. And it's the slope style events, women's slope style. This woman named Jamie Mo Crazy, and I think it's all. I apologize. I think she's a Park City girl. I'm pretty sure Utah. If I'm getting that wrong, Jamie, I apologize. And she's a professional freestyle skier, and she is going to do a backflip on this massive jump. And she does it, and she comes up short, and she touches her ski tips on the knuckle of the jump. So those that know sort of the way these slope style jumps are made, there's sort of this big elevated takeoff and then a flat spot and then the landing surface that you land on, and the knuckle is sort of that transition between the flat spot and where you want to land. Yep. And so she sort of I guess under rotates a little bit, and the ski tips touch before her feet kind of come around. So they touch and immediately stop. And then that pile drives, as you can imagine, her head straight into the snow. And these tabletops are like 60 feet long. There's a large amount of air and quite a bit of descending drop there. So she's got lots of energy, lots of potential energy built up to hurt herself. So she touches her ski tips, pile drives herself into the snow, and she's unconscious, seizing at the bottom. With a severe head injury. So our response goes into play. I'm not the first person there, another ski patroller's there, but this is sort of a full scale response. And so all of our available people are on this call. And yeah, she's unconscious, she's clamped down, she's seizing, and everyone goes to work. Our key ALS and mountain doctors are there. She gets paralyzed with succinylcholine, like the paralyzing drug, to get intubated. I remember starting the IV on her, and she was posturing so hard to her core. Those that know that, so she was decorticate, so she's all postured up. When people have bad head injuries, they essentially like clamp down or seize up. Their muscles go super stiff, and I remember trying to get her arm straight enough to get access to the vein in her arm, and it took all my strength. And she's this tiny little woman. She's probably 5'4", and I don't know, 120 pounds maybe or something. And I ended up having to kneel on her hand, like with all of my body weight, to hold her arm straight, just to get access there to the IV. So that's a complicated place to have those kind of calls happening. It's high profile. There's cameras. Everyone's watching. It's our sisters there. It's really sort of scary and tragic for everybody. She gets intubated and stabilized as well as we can there. We can't land the helicopter super close by, so we have to ski a few hundred meters to a designated landing spot. But she's now unconscious, paralyzed, so she needs to be bagged. She's intubated and bagged. So we put her in the toboggan, and then someone needs to sort of ride with her to keep breathing for her as we go. So I got on the toboggan and straddled her, and luckily she's relatively small, so there's sort of room for both of us to do that. And there's a bit of technique to be stable enough to manage your weight there. And James, the guy that was first on scene, is super good skier, and so he's able to navigate down through the rest of the course on the toboggan. And while I bagged her in the back of the toboggan to the helicopter, and then into the helicopter down to the clinic, where she then was again sort of stabilized, but immediately flown by our BC air ambulance to the primary trauma center. It really seemed like one of those sort of critical head injuries where she had obviously a significant bleed. And those of the paramedics that worked on her that had seen that type of stuff before, like they're just like, she's not going to survive. Like that's the type of injury that she's not going to survive. She does survive to the Vancouver General Hospital there, rooftop, to the main trauma center there. And again, I could be getting this wrong, but I think it's relatively new technology. The sort of idea that you drill a hole in the skull to release the pressure of the bleeding that's happening. That's what squeezes your brain and kills people super quickly. That have these sort of pressure sensor / gas sensors that let those that are the experts in it sort of optimize the best way to recover that patient with respect to optimization and blood gases and all those complicated ICU type things. This is, I think the first time they used this new technology to give her the best chance of surviving. Then the long story of the long story is that she's American. They stabilize her enough to fly back to the US. And the last we hear of it is that she's alive. But at that point, that type of head injury suggests that most likely she's like deeply head injured, sort of vegetabilized patient. It would be what the history would suggest that type of injury ends up at. So we don't really hear much about it after that she survived. She's been repatriated to the US, and we wish her the best of luck. A year later, I'm at the same festival. There's these big entertainment things in the village as well, these sort of film festival and a big slideshow. And I'm at that enjoying myself. This accident's so long in the memory banks. The host gets up and is like, we love our mountain sports. We love celebrating extreme sports, but at the same time, terrible things can happen. Last year, there was this horrible accident. This woman, Jamie Mo-Crazy, had this terrible head injury. And remarkably, and thanks to the efforts of, the ski patrol and the medical practitioners down the line, she's alive and well and here today. And I'm like, oh no. God, I was like, no way. I was like, that girl is all I knew of her from then. I was like, is here, like back. So after the show, I wandered my way through the probably 1,000 people that were at this big event. And I got a chance to sort of catch her attention and introduce myself, and I was emotional. I think we both shed tears. I was just like,
dude,
Jamie,
I love that.
Unbelievable. I think about it now, and like her mom was there and her whole family was there, and I'm like, I'm Brian. I'm the paramedic that ended up, flying down to off the ski hill with you, and we sort of just I had a stunned look, and then pretty meaningful conversation there. And since then she's come back. She's back on skis. She's back skiing. She's had this long, difficult, and incredible recovery. She's functioning cognitively well skiing. She got married last year, got invited to her wedding. Unfortunately, I couldn't go, but one of the ALS paramedic that intubated her went, and he was like, it was tearful, man. Like, here's this woman, their family, a really quite educated family. Her sister was also a doctor, which played a big role in her recovery. She has this foundation, I think called Mo Crazy Strong now, but if you look it up, Jamie Mo Crazy. That story, she's an advocate for head injury recovery. She had a bunch of different modalities. She's a public speaker. I think there's a documentary coming out on her recovery.
Awesome.
And so, what it's like, just such a meaningful thing. All we did was our best. It did not look favorable for how deeply injured she was, and to see that recovery and then make that sort of connection years later. Those things make terrible things worth being a part of,
Yeah. It's such a rarity to ever see the people that we rescue, and
exactly.
For you to be able to connect with her, and oh man, that is incredible. I absolutely love that.
So
totally
really, I guess, proud to be part of Jamie's story there and see her do so well down that. We had another one. A guy cartwheeled through this cliff section, smashed his head, unconscious, is paralyzed, not paralyzed, but paralyzed with drugs in order to intubated on scene. Flew into the valley, and even a few months later, he showed back up on the ski hill to thank us. Fully functional ski patroller, or a snowboarder. Yeah, fully functional, back and healthy, and you're just like, man. And then
incredible.
and then the flip side of that is the relatively benign fall to paraplegic, or quadriplegic, which is terrible as well.
Yeah. Brian, oh my gosh.
But the diversity, I guess, as we sort of wrap it up, the arena of ski patrolling for me, which I laugh with my friends and those of us that do it, because it's kind of this sort of ski bum job. It's professional, but it's not professional like Coast Guard rescue swimmers, or look at the Travis County Starflight, like these sort of big, incredible rescue organizations, Air Zermatt, like all over the world. You sort of need like just a ski patroller, but it's this arena of patients,
badass stories that come out of nowhere.
Patients in austere environments, and difficult management of patients, and incredible teamwork, and tools and skills that are unique to skiing and ski patrollers that make it really special. And then you add in the medicine, the rope rescue, the helicopter work, and for me, there's just nothing else I'd rather do. It's super meaningful for me, and I've been chased deeply by injury over my career, and had to face in the last couple of years having to say goodbye to that career, and that's difficult, and there's a lot of identity, as wrapped up in all of that, and that takes its toll on the nervous system. And I've hurt a lot and been in pain. It sort of steals the joy of that job, and so I just more and more grateful for the opportunity to be part of that incredible program and group of ridiculous characters that I work with, that are a sideshow at best until the call comes in, and then as professional as anybody I've worked with when necessary. And then you don't just go back to the station, clean up and wait. You go back to what our staging area, clean up, and then decompress with going to ski some more steep terrain or powder snow with your friends, and recognize that this this privilege of sliding on snow gives us both our sort of great love in our life and our livelihood.
Yeah.
I don't know if it gets any better.
Dude, that's freaking badass.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Brian, this has been incredible. You know, we were supposed to sit here and talk a little bit about like your avalanche and prevention and safety, but dude, we're already like 2 hours into this.
I know,
So,
right? Well, I mean, let's touch on that because it's, I guess, it's unique to the rescue world.
We could do a full asterisk episode on this, or you can just give us a preview now.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it'll take too long. What we said, ski patrollers, we take care of the marking, we do the first aid and the rescue, and then we do the avalanche control. Whistler Blackcomb was one of the biggest avalanche ski area avalanche programs in North America. And for those that don't know it, we've got this ski area. It snows a bunch. A lot of the terrain is what's called avalanche terrain, has the potential to cause or avalanches be triggered either naturally, they just happen on their own based on the weakness of the snow, or skiers can cause avalanches to happen by skiing into places where the snow then fails and you could get slid. It can slide and either pile drive you into the terrain below, smash you into trees, which can be fatal in and of itself, or bury you, and then and that can be fatal as well. So in a ski area, obviously the mandate is that we can't have people exposed to that hazard. Right. So then we have an avalanche program that makes sure we'll go and do our best to set off or trigger, or at least make sure that avalanches aren't going to happen within the ski area, so that we can then open it to the general public, and their only thing that they have to worry about is skiing powder with their friends and have a great time. That's the whole point. But depending on what happens, we need to go and mitigate that hazard ahead of time. And so we'll do that with either just avoiding places, keeping things closed, skiing into terrain and trying to trigger the avalanche ourselves on skis, which can be both harrowing, but for the most part fun if you keep it within the sort of risk tolerance that's defined in our policies. Trigger the avalanches ourselves to just keep the snow from move the snow preemptively. And then in bigger, more hazardous areas, we use explosives to control the avalanches. And
make you go boom.
So groups of two, called avalanche control teams, will move through a designated area called an avalanche control route, or route, depending on which side of the border you come from. And will a combination of ski through terrain, apply explosives, make sure we're happy that the avalanche hazard, the likelihood of someone triggering an avalanche, is low enough that we're happy to open that to the public. And so we'll do that by hand. We'll just throw explosives by hand, which is awesome. We'll hang them on ropes so that they stay in a specific spot that we need them to stay. We'll wheel them out on these big sort of industrial clotheslines over gullies and cliffy areas that we can't get to. We'll shoot them from a glorified potato gun full of pressurized nitrogen.
Oh my God! What?
Yeah, called an avalancher. And then we'll also drop explosives from the helicopter. And so all of those methods are fair game to try and make sure the hazard's mitigated. So it's an early morning that's before the lift. So we'll take snowmobiles up in the morning to the top of the ski hill. We'll gather some weather data. We'll use some electronic telemetry to look at further weather. There's one designated person called the avalanche forecaster. They're responsible for running that avalanche mitigation. And then they've got their workers, the avalanche control teams, that will then move out onto the different areas and go about our explosives control management. So sort of get a game plan in the morning, use the computer telemetry to figure out what's going on, see what it's like outside, look at the temperature, how much snow, where we think the hazard's going to be, how much of it, how much explosives we need. Painfully and arduously, because their explosives are stored on the ski hill, there's a bunch of regulatory distance requirements away from the public. So our explosives are stored in these obscure places. So for us to go get them, we got a snowmobile, go get the explosives or use a snowcat. It takes us a while to do that. Then we've got to arm them, apply the fuses and the blasting caps to them, and then we head out on our routes to go send our explosives out. So
blow some snow up.
it's awesome. It's hard work. You're working in the storm. You're hiking ridges in the dark in the crazy weather. You're working with one other person. There's some risk involved for sure, but there's a lot of risk management, which again, I point out to, it's that real time risk management for me is one of my most valuable sort of ways to gain experience here. It's your own risk. You've got a dynamic environment. You're weighing all sorts of factors, and you're making decisions like in the moment all the time to sort of try and keep yourself safe, but also make sure, because you could just avoid it altogether, but then you don't get the ski area open. So to try and accomplish the goal. So there's that sort of risk optimization part of the curve that we talk about in lots of different talks we've been a part of. And you're working with an incredible team. And at the end of it, if everything goes well, you also ski some powder by yourself before the ski hills open. And so it's
I need to come hang out with you a lot.
Yeah, you do. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big part of the ski patrol career. And I think if there wasn't a big avalanche control program here, that's kept me for 26 years for sure. Between the sort of more dynamic rescues and the avalanche control, every day is adventurous for sure. And you just get to see really the best parts of the ski hill, sunrises, and for the most part of my forward, I work 4 on 3 off schedule. If it's snowing a lot, it's 4 sunrises in these wild mountain environments by yourself, one other person. Yeah, it's a special opportunity. And it's pretty much just kind of Wile E. Coyote, right? Like light the fuse with the pull wire, burns for us at that elevation 2 minutes and kind of 20 seconds. Throw it onto the slope, wait for it to go boom, check that it's gone off, see if you got a result, move on. Kind of strategic movement, lots of decision making, lots of good communication, and hopefully skiing good quality snow at the end of it. And then crack it for the public, who is all your friends waiting in the lift line, or me on a day of off watching the people that are working. There's for the love of powder skiing, there's a family around that as well. So there's this great motivation for us that comes during ski patrol, or just ski avalanche control rather. It's like, we're here to get the hill open so that people can go ski their powder. And so that's highly motivating and keeps it everybody engaged. And you want to do a good job, and you want to be relatively quick without rushing or cutting corners. And yeah, do the lots of buzzwords about being mindful or present these days for mental health and the rest of it. And gosh, that work is, being a hoist operator, doing avalanche control on a big call, like you are present whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
you're highly stimulated and in the moment, and that's, I guess, served my adult ADHD quite well.
Yeah, and the adrenaline rush all the time.
Yeah. Forced to be focused. So that's, I guess, why I'm still drawn to it.
Oh my gosh, Brian, this has been amazing. All right, I tell you what, man, unless you've got anything crazy, I'm gonna ask you one more question, then we'll cut it out, because we've been going for a while, man. This has been fun. I've had a great time talking to you, man.
I know awesome. we barely even talked about hoisting, which is kind of where you and I connected by, but
totally.
That's sidebar.
We can always do this again. Yeah, I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Power line workers onto live 500 kilovolt power lines with the hoist is also pretty wild.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Dude, you guys do some crazy stuff up there. I absolutely love it. I need to come hang out with you. That's all there is to it. Maybe I'll move up there for like a couple months.
I know we've talked about some of your behind the scenes different work. There's great hospitality here. We're happy to provide it. Rob's 30 minutes down the road.
Yes.
And so you'll have a good time if you come here. We'll show you around.
Right. I like this idea. Idea a lot.
What was the last question? You're going to ask one.
Last question. One more is, with what you've got going and everything you've done, 26 years of doing this, if you could pass on some good advice, what would it be?
That's a good point. I have a great fear of failing in front of my peers. No one likes to do that. It's happened a lot. And the devil is in the details when it comes to doing this work. You know, it's the smallest things within your rescue work, or your movement in and out of the helicopter, or making connections, or where you store your saline for your IV in a cold day. Like, you know, it just drills down and down and down into the details, and try and work those the best you can before you're having to figure out the details in the moment, because we all know that doesn't go very well. You're never going to make these sort of Jason Bourne-esque decisions when you're already in the black, or about to tunnel your way into the black with cognitive overload and task saturation and all the rest of that stuff. So it is to recognize that if you think or feel like you're doing something cool, there's someone right around the corner doing something cooler and doing it better than you are. And so that's been great. And that was what brought me to Heli Expo, I think, from Wildfire. You know, we're like, oh, we've got this sort of world-class program. Like, do we? I don't know. I've never seen anyone else's program.
Yeah.
I went myself to Heli Expo, fell into the Goodrich Hoist user conference, which was, I think, early days back then in 2015, and realized here's this exposure to all these people around the world doing, you know, that's when I first found out about Air Zermatt. And it's like, oh, like real rescue dudes, like,
yeah,
not like don't even,
real rescue,
real mountain rescue dudes, high elevation. And so all you're like, okay, right. So the next thing is seek out what other people are doing. And maybe when you look, we've all seen it on TV, like you see something, a short video clip, and you're like, what were those guys thinking? We weren't there. We don't know what the decisions were to lead up to that. Does that look like an error in that short period? Yes. Or maybe it was strategic, or we likely would have made the same error because you couldn't do it. Or there's an opportunity to train and teach, like you guys at SR3, capturing the opportunity for those people that haven't had much exposure to what's out there, get a chance to be like, oh man, we actually were lucky not to have made a mistake, and now we learn more from that. So seek out who's doing what, and don't be critical when you see something on the internet that looks dumb, because thank goodness there's not been a lot of cameras on me over the years. Lots of dumb shit, for better or worse, right? Whether you and that's the other thing. No one's intending to be bad at their job, or an idiot, or make a bad decision. And so just try and be really, really curious. Oh wow, there's this crazy lesson to be learned, or this accident that happened. You like how and why. And props to all those people that have come to Goodrich and shared what, you know, potentially could be criticized incidents, and opened up their willingness to be criticized to pass that information along to other people. And so I always just try and find, I'm just like, just be curious, ask curious questions about what was the decision making that got people to the point that they either were successful or had some sort of error.
Yeah.
Because it is right around the corner for every single one of us.
I'm on
right around the corner. Yeah.
I try to air my dirty laundry as well, as far as mistakes I've made. And I had somebody say to me one time, like, wow, that's really, I don't want to use the word brave. I can't remember what she said, but like, you're really putting yourself out there. I was like, yeah, but if I don't, then who will? And if I don't admit my mistakes and try to help somebody learn it, then you're going to learn by making a mistake, which might be worse than what I did. So
100%. And I think everyone's fooling themselves if they tend to be critical. Someone errs or is willing to share something, they're like, well, that was sort of dumb. We all know that our number could be right around the corner, or we've also had things happen that we're a hair away from something terrible happening, or we're lucky enough to catch it or recognize that, you know, just no one's immune.
Right.
And maybe props to I guess our more recent friend Dave Weber there from the Denali Rescue program. And that, you know, like those talks on his advocation for people to choose the right people in your organization, and don't be afraid to recognize that some people might not have the skill, and then expect a high level of skill, and work hard to keep what is he's just like, there's that concept of it being different between the person that a malperformed sucking and that just the operation generally sucked, and that usually comes from details and missing skill. And so just always not be afraid to be like, that performance was poor and we can do it better, and how do we get there?
Absolutely.
And that's also
go ahead.
Oh, that's also what I love about this work we do, is that every time I do something, I was like, I'm 26 years into this and 17 to hoisting or longer now, and just be like, I could do that better. How could I do that better? Like, that's a little clunky. Like, I wish I was smoother on that. And just always trying to refine.
Well, it's kind of funny because like we talk about this so much, and like not everybody can relate to what we do. Helicopter rescue and rescue in general is not a large like scale of a job. People try hard to get into this type of work in this career.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to relate it to sports, right? Everybody has a bad game. Even professionals at the highest level, being paid the most money, they have a bad game. They had a bad pass. They had a bad catch. They couldn't shoot the ball to save their life. And they're at the top of their game. Well, us in our rescue world where we're at the top of our game for the rescue side of things. You might have a bad rescue. It might show up on YouTube. That sucked. You don't suck. That sucked. Thank you, Dave Weber.
Totally true. I think about that. We did a SAR rescue last summer with Squamish Search and Rescue with Blackcomb helicopters, Hoist rescue in the high alpine up the Tantalus, double Lizard pick of these climbers that had gotten stuck in this gully, and Petzl Lizard, for those that know, that sort of this specialty kind of pick off device for keeping the helicopter from being fixed to the rock wall. And the first hoist, I picked it up. It was okay. The load was fairly stable. It was a double up, and we just pulled back kind of out of the gully and got it halfway up. I was like, well, this actual load looks pretty good. It's going to stay smooth. And then sure enough, it got some oscillation from the rotor wash, and then like quite a bit of momentum. And there's a camera crew filming for a documentary, sort of different from that, but happened to be there. And sure enough, I'm like, great. Just got a freaking shitty hoist on camera, oscillating, fighting it, messy, all of that. And I was just like, great.
And the next one you do will be smooth as silk too.
Yeah. And then we went back and grabbed the other one. I was smart enough to back out and get this poor momentum, which I should have done in the first place, but it just looked like it was going to be a smooth pick. And so anyways, you're just like, someone's going to look at that and be like, what an idiot. And I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah. No, it was a bad hoist. One bad hoist.
Yeah.
The next one is beautiful. I get it.
Yeah, totally.
Brian, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. You've given me a ton of your time. The stories, my gosh, you're right. We barely even touched into like helicopter hoist stuff and rescue stuff. Mm-hmm. Good Lord, we could keep going. You know what? Maybe we will.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We'll get back together.
We can. It's been fun. I'll thank you for bringing the rescue community together with this podcast. Thanks, and being able to hear people from around the world do what they do in different places. I'm ultra admiration for the rescue swimming group that's out there. That the water picks, moving boats. That's just a whole nother arena that I have no experience in, and know that it's hard for sure. And so props to the group that's doing that. And a huge thank you, I would say again, to Goodrich Hoists for being willing to open up that Hoist user conference. Anyone that hasn't been to that's in the Hoist rescue or Hoist work game, that's a place where you can see all the people from around the world doing that. And great friends like yourself. First met Tony, when I first went there, I met Tony Weber in my first year, and he's, as we know, like the original OG there in San Diego. San Diego sheriff.
Yeah.
and he was super good to me. I think he could tell I was relatively new to that program. He was ultra hospitable. It's become a good friend, bounce all sorts of stuff off of him and all the rest of the people. All of our crews are there at Air Zermatt, which I met and just like cornered him and picked his brain on all sorts of stuff. And was lucky enough to now call him a friend and end up at see their program deeply. Yeah, just like what an opportunity to get around the world and see who's doing what. And I've learned a ton. Yeah. So, and had a ton of fun. We realized there's this really great family, right? And that SR3 crews come together with a bunch of awesome people.
Yeah. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we look forward to it every year.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm coming up to Whistler one of these days.
Okay.
I'm gonna hang out with you there. And if I don't see you there, I'll see you at HAI.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, I look at Instagram a lot, but I don't really post anything. But it's just my name there, Brian Fishbook, Instagram. If somebody else has got questions about any of that stuff,
I'll make sure you're tagged. How's that?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you can go to my Instagram and then find Brian. Hey,
Roger. Nice one.
Awesome, brother. I will catch you later. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResQ.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResQ. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.